Chapter 1868. Summon the ancestor? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Summon my ass. Dad would love nothing more than for me to suffer. Call Qing-er? At this moment he could no longer sense Qing-er's aura. Qing-er and my father should be very very far away by now. He could only rely on himself. Yi Xian looked up at Mo Wuxian in the starry sky and smiled. I'll go first. As soon as he finished speaking, he stamped his right foot. The space collapsed and he turned into a sword light that shot up into the sky. A ray of sword light tore through the starry sky. In the starry sky, a ray of sword light slashed against that powerful force. Boom. The sword light shattered, and Yi Xian fell straight into the abyss of spacetime of the fourth layer. As he fell, the abyss of spacetime actually distorted. In the abyss of spacetime, Yi Xian opened his palm. The green profound sword flew to his feet and forcibly held him back. In the starry sky, that mysterious force was still falling straight down. If that force was allowed to fall completely, the entire human universe would be thrown into the abyss of spacetime. One palm to destroy a universe. His opponent could really do it. And the ancestor of the divine human race in front of him was not someone he could contend with now. Was he really going to die? As he thought of this, Yi Xian suddenly laughed. If he was going to die, so be it. He stamped his right foot and turned into a ray of sword light that flew out of the fourth layer of spacetime and slashed at that powerful force. In the starry sky, Missouri Wuxian looked down at Yi Xian with an indifferent expression, as if he was looking at an ant. To him, humans were indeed like ants. In the starry sky, Yi Xian's sword once again slashed against that powerful force. However, he was unable to shake that powerful force. On the contrary, he was once again thrown into the abyss of spacetime. This time, his physical body exploded, leaving only his soul. The difference in strength was too great. In the starry sky, Missouri Wuxian looked down at Yi Xian in the abyss of spacetime. A mayfly trying to shake a tree. Yi Xian escaped from the spacetime abyss. He looked at Mo Wuxian and said with a smile, "Again." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack again. Meanwhile, Shaoan appeared by his side and Shaoan looked at him and said, "If you attack again, you'll die." Right now, Yi Xian had already suffered very serious injuries. If he attacked again, he would undoubtedly die. The two of them were not on the same level at all. The ancestors of the divine race. Who was this person? That was a super giant from who knows how many tens of thousands of years ago. Even if it was just a wisp of his soul, it was not something that Yi Xian could fight against. Yi Xian smiled and said, "If I die, then so be it." Shaoan looked at Yi Xian for a moment before she smiled and said, "I'll go with you." As she spoke, she took the initiative to hold Yi Xian's hand. Meanwhile, Jingji suddenly said, "What are you talking about? Young Master Yi, they call your ancestors, you also call your ancestors." Yi Xian glanced at Jingji and said with a smile, "Miss Jingji, I can't call my ancestors nor can I call anyone." Jingji's face was a little pale. "Are you serious?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Do I look like I'm lying?" After a moment of silence, Jingji said, "Farewell." After saying that, she turned around and disappeared at the end of the horizon. She had already escaped from the spacetime of this universe, so naturally she could escape from this human universe. In fact, she had wanted to leave this human universe for a long time. However, she was still willing to believe in the plain-dressed woman because she was the strongest person she had ever met. However, after seeing the ancestor of the divine race, she was a little shaken. Was this plain-dressed woman really as strong as the ancestor of the divine race? If so, why hadn't she appeared now? There was only one explanation for her not appearing, and that was fear. Therefore she chose to escape. Seeing Jingji escape, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He did not blame Jingji because everyone had the right to make their own choice. However, he was still a little surprised. There were some people who you thought were friends but in fact they weren't. Some people could only share wealth but not trials and tribulations. Yi Xian turned to look at Shaoan and smiled, "Actually, you can also leave." Shaoan shook his head, "I've given you my heart. Where can I go?" Yi Xian was speechless. Lin Shan also smiled, "Looks like it's hard to escape today." Yi Xian looked at Lin Shan and smiled, "Senior Lin Shan, you can also leave." Lin Shan shook his head, "I owe you a favor and this favor naturally has to be returned." He was able to break through again because of Yi Xian's help to break the seal. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, in the distant starry sky, the power suddenly boiled, and in an instant, the entire starry sky began to be annihilated bit by bit. This power's target was not just him, Yi Xian, but the entire human universe. And at this moment, this power was destroying the origin of this universe. It couldn't be defended. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Some things, even if one tried his best, might not have a good ending. Of course he had a clear conscience. He had tried his best. Just then Yanzhu suddenly said, "It looks like the woman in the plain dress that all of you have been waiting for will not appear." In fact, he had been waiting for the woman in the plain dress and the man in green to appear, and then he would capture them in one fell swoop. But now it seemed that they would not appear. Below, Yi Xian looked up at the terrifying power, and the next moment, his soul began to burn. Soul ignition. Although he was no match for them, he would not sit and wait for death. Even if he were to die, he would die in battle. Just as Yi Xian was about to make a move, a shocked voice suddenly came from the distant sky. "Wait! Young Master Yi, wait!" When he heard this, Yi Xian looked up into the distant sky. The space there suddenly split open, and then a middle-aged man flew out. It was none other than the Emperor. The Emperor shuddered when he saw that Yi Xian was burning his soul, and he hurriedly appeared in front of Yi Xian and slapped his palm against Yi Xian's shoulder. Bang! The flames on Yi Xian's body vanished. Yi Xian was puzzled. "Senior, you are?" The Emperor hurriedly said, "What do you mean by senior? I'm a few years older than you. If you don't mind, I'll call you Big Brother." "Big Brother?" Yi Xian was stunned. "You're a few years older than me and I'm calling you Big Brother? Is there something wrong with that?" Suddenly Yanzhu said from afar, "Your Majesty?" Yanzhu turned around to look at the Grand Elder and roared with laughter, "That's me." Yanzhu gazed at the Emperor. "You intend to help this human?" The Emperor smiled. "Is there a problem?" Yanzhu stared at the Emperor. "Why?" The Emperor roared with laughter. "Because he's my big brother." "Big brother?" Yi Xian was confused. "Senior, do we know each other?" The Emperor looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Didn't we just get to know each other?" Yi Xian was speechless. Just then, the horrifying energy in the starry sky began to disappear bit by bit. Mo Wuxian frowned when he saw this and he turned around to look. There was an old man standing not too far away. It was the governor of Huang City. Yanzhu's face darkened at the sight of the old man. Why was this old man here as well? And by the looks of it, he was here to help Yi Xian. The governor looked down at Yi Xian and smiled. "Young Master Yi?" Yi Xian asked in a low voice. "Senior, do you know Qing'er?" "Qing'er?" The governor's eyelid twitched. "The woman in the plain dress?" Yi Xian nodded. "She's Qing'er." Desolate City Lord smiled. "Yes." Yi Xian understood now. No wonder he came to help. Mo Wuxian suddenly said, "Since when did the fairies side with the humans?" The governor looked at Mo Wuxian. "Since this moment." Mo Wuxian shook his head and smiled. "How laughable. I never thought you fairies would lower yourselves to mingle with humans. How laughable. If your ancestor finds out, I wonder if he'll die from anger." The governor smiled. "You don't have to worry about that." Mo Wuxian stared at the governor. "Let me see if you can protect this human today." As he spoke, he suddenly flipped his hand and pressed down. Boom. In an instant, the spacetime around the governor collapsed and he fell to the bottom of the spacetime abyss. Endless spacetime pressure pressed down on him, about to crush him. The governor shook his head with a smile. He was slightly worried that the ancestor's strength was even more terrifying than the woman in the plain dress. But now it seemed like he was weaker than the woman in the plain dress. Chapter 1869. Hearing the emperor's words, Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. At the same time, he felt a surge of warmth in his heart. Qing'er. He knew that the emperor was not doing this for Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not have that kind of influence. The emperor was doing this for Qing'er. Yi Xian could not help but sigh. Was he really a second-generation heir? Right at this moment, the space in the surroundings suddenly split open, and then numerous powerful auras surged out. Not long after, dozens of mysterious experts appeared in the surroundings, blocking the divine race's experts. In the starry sky, Yanzhu's face instantly sank when he saw this. So many cultivators were helping Yi Xian. Yanzhu stared at the emperor in front of Yi Xian. "Emperor, as far as I know, you are friends with an elder of the god tribe. Why are you doing this?" The emperor smiled. "Justice is in the hearts of men. The god tribe has committed such inhumane acts. Anyone with the slightest sense of justice would not sit by and watch." Yanzhu flew into a rage. T. Emperor, you slaughtered millions of lives for your own selfish reasons. Now you're talking about justice? Where's your dignity? The emperor's smile turned cold. "I'll make this clear. Young Master Yi is my big brother. If the god tribe wants to touch him, they'll have to do it over my dead body." Yi Xian was speechless. Yanzhu's face trembled with anger. "Emperor, you're a 9th-rank cultivator after all. How dare you call a human your big brother? Aren't you afraid that everyone in the universe will laugh at you? The emperor chuckled. Laugh at me? If they think I'm stupid, then laugh all you want. I don't care. Yan Zhu stared at the emperor. Is it because of that woman in a plain dress? The emperor laughed and was about to speak when he remembered something. He frowned. You're stalling for time. As soon as he finished speaking, the starry sky behind Yan Zhu suddenly trembled. In the next moment, countless experts of the God clan charged out. The entire tribe had come out. Among them there were a total of 4 Phase 9 powerhouses, and the God clan's patriarch, Mo Yen, was among them. The emperor's face darkened when he saw this. He didn't expect Yan Zhu to be so ruthless. This was almost the power of the entire divine human race. Yan Zhu looked at the emperor. What did that plainly dressed woman give you that you're willing to go against the divine clan for a human? At this moment, Mo Wuxian's voice suddenly came from the distant starry sky. Don't ask for the reason. Since you've made an enemy of the divine humans, then kill you. Yan Zhu still wanted to say something, but Mo Yen suddenly said, kill. As soon as he finished speaking, the divine race experts behind him charged towards Yi Xian's group. Next to Yi Xian, Emperor Jun said solemnly, Young Master Yi, be careful. As he spoke, he took a step forward. A powerful force swept out from his body like a volcanic eruption. His Majesty stopped the 2 9th phase divine humans right away. Meanwhile, Mo Yen charged at Yi Xian. However, he just made a move when an old man blocked his way. It was Jingyu of the fairy race. Jingyu looked at Mo Yen. In the next moment, countless strange green talismans appeared around Mo Yen. Mo Yen's eyes narrowed slightly. The Tao of Talismans? Is the fairy race really going to go against the divine clan for a human? Jingyu nodded. Yes. Mo Yen was slightly puzzled. Why? Jingyu fell silent for a moment before he said, Our intelligence isn't on the same level. I can't answer you. Mo Yen was furious. How dare you insult me? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Rumble. The starry sky around Jingyu transformed into a vortex, but it returned to normal in the blink of an eye. At the same time, the strange green talismans formed a space-time cage that trapped Mo Yen within. Mo Yen's face turned solemn. Meanwhile, Grand Elder Yan Zhu charged at Yi Xian. However, he just arrived in front of Yi Xian when a fairy race old man blocked his way. This fairy race old man was a 9th rank expert as well. Yan Zhu's face instantly sank when he saw the old man. At this moment he felt even more uneasy. The fairy race is doing its best to help Yi Xian. What? It's definitely because of that woman in a plain dress. What on earth did the woman in the simple dress use to make the entire elf race give their all to help Yi Xian? According to his thoughts, he should stop fighting for now and figure this out. Unfortunately, the situation had developed to this point, and it was no longer within his control. After Yan Zhu was blocked, Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings. He noticed that the divine race didn't have any more 9th rank experts. Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. In the distant horizon, the head of a divine general flew into the air. Instant kill. Experts below the 9th rank couldn't withstand a single strike of Yi Xian's. After killing a divine general with a single strike, Yi Xian didn't stop and slashed once more. In next to no time, the heads of some divine race experts flew into the air in succession. It was like slaughtering chickens. Yan Zhu's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly said, Stop that fellow Yi Xian. However, at this moment, no one in the divine race could stop Yi Xian at all. Right at this moment, a world-shaking explosion suddenly resounded in the distant starry sky, and then an old man retreated repeatedly. It was the city governor of Desolation City who was fighting Mo Wuxian. After he repulsed the city governor with a single strike, Mo Wuxian suddenly gazed at Yi Xian, and then he pointed his finger forward. Yi Xian suddenly raised his head, drew his sword and slashed. Life and death were decided by drawing the sword. Rumble. Along with an expanse of sword light shattering, Yi Xian fell directly into the spatial abyss of the 4th level. Mo Wuxian was just about to attack again when the city governor suddenly appeared in front of him. Mo Wuxian's eyes narrowed slightly. You're courting death. As soon as he finished speaking, he smashed his fist forward. The city governor smashed his fist forward as well. Both of them were very simple punches. As soon as their fists collided, the expanse of space they were in was instantly obliterated. The city governor retreated once more. Mo Wuxian gazed at the city governor. Do you want your spirit race to be annihilated? The city governor smiled and said, My spirit race will protect this young Master Yi. Mo Wuxian stared at the city governor. I'm not dead. The city governor fell silent. Mo Wuxian's main body wasn't dead. Mo Wuxian continued. I'll give you one last chance. If you leave with your spirit race's experts now, then I'll let bygones be bygones out of consideration for your spirit race's ancestors. But if you insist on helping this human, then I guarantee that your spirit race will be slaughtered by my divine race. The city governor smiled and said, My spirit race will protect this young Master Yi. Mo Wuxian gazed at the city governor and then he shook his head. Your actions are slightly difficult for me to understand. The city governor laughed. There's no need to understand. Mo Wuxian, if you have the ability, then annihilate my spirit race today. Otherwise my spirit race will live and die with young Master Yi. Mo Wuxian nodded. I'll fulfill your wish. As soon as he finished speaking, his body began to slowly turn illusory. Seeing this, the city governor frowned. Was he going to disappear? Very quickly he seemed to have thought of something. His pupils constricted. Mo Wuxian was going to come with his main body. On the other side, Yanzhu and the others also noticed this. When Yanzhu realized that Mo Wuxian was going to come with his main body, he heaved a sigh of relief. Now that things had developed to such a drastic change, only Mo Wuxian's main body could completely deal with Yi Xian and the others. Mo Yan and the others stopped as well. They were all 9th stage experts. In a short period of time no one could kill the other. Now they only needed to wait for their ancestor's main body to come. Then everything would be over. The city governor's face darkened. He hadn't expected that the situation would develop to such an extent. Not only had the god race summoned their ancestor as soon as they arrived, Mo Wuxian was even going to come with his main body. They were determined to annihilate Yi Xian. The emperor walked over to the city governor's side and spoke in a low voice. How long will it take for them to get here? The city governor shook his head. I don't know. But it shouldn't be too long. The emperor asked. What should we do? The city governor shook his head again. I don't know. This ancestor of the god race was able to suppress him with just a strand of his soul. So, if the ancestor's main body arrived, then he would definitely be unable to defeat the ancestor. Because it was very likely that the ancestor was a 10th stage expert. When he thought up to here, the city governor's expression grew even more solemn. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, Seniors. The emperor and the city governor gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian cupped his fists and said, I, Yi Xian, will forever remember your help just now. The emperor smiled. It's a small matter. Yi Xian shook his head. To me it's a matter of life and death. Seniors, please go back. The matter between me and the divine human race will be settled by us. He didn't take their help for granted. The city governor hesitated for a moment and said, My young friend, if Mo Wuxian's main body arrives, then we really won't be able to stop him. May I know if you can contact that senior in a plain dress? Yi Xian shook his head. No. The city governor sighed in his heart. Meanwhile, the emperor spoke abruptly, She won't stand by idly. The city governor fell silent. At this moment he was slightly hesitant. Should I make a bigger bet? Now Yi Xian owed him a favor. But if he left with the soul race right now, then it wouldn't be a huge favor, and the benefits he would obtain in the future would definitely be limited. On the other hand, if he stayed behind to face Mo Wuxian with Yi Xian, then he would owe him a huge favor. Of course the risk was huge as well. If the woman in a plain dress really didn't show up, then all of them would really die. Moreover, even if the woman in a plain dress did show up, if she wasn't a match for Mo Wuxian, then all of them would be dead. Should I make a bet? At this moment, the city governor was extremely conflicted. Suddenly the emperor smiled and said, I'll stay. The city governor gazed at the emperor. The emperor fell silent for a moment before he said, Old geezer, how do you feel when you face Mo Wuxian? The city governor replied, Formidable. The emperor asked, What about when you face senior in a plain dress? The city governor's face turned slightly unsightly. Terror. He was terrified when he faced the woman in a plain dress. At this point, the city governor suddenly smiled and said, I, Jingyan, have lived for 8 million years. If I can't improve, then what's the point of living for another million years? As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian and roared with laughter. My young friend, the soul race will live or die with you today. If we live, then please put in a good word for us in the future and ask her to guide us. The old man and the soul race will be eternally grateful. If we die, then everything will be over. He made the bet. Not only was he risking his life, but he was also risking the lives of his entire race. Chapter 1870. The emperor was shocked. He didn't expect the old man to bet so much that he even brought the entire fairy race with him. This was a bit too much. Of course, wasn't the emperor a bit too much? He wasn't confident that he would win, but he didn't regret it. What he felt when facing the woman was fear that came from the depths of his heart. His instincts told him to trust the woman. At the side, Yi Xian had a complicated look on his face. He knew that the reason why these two dared to bet so much was because of Qing'er. Qing'er. Yi Xian looked into space. To be honest, with a sister like her, was there really a need for him to fight? Was there? For the first time he felt that he might as well just be a second-generation heir. He didn't want to fight anymore. Just then the entire galaxy was stirred. The true gods in the distance were excited at the sight of this. He's here. Their ancestor is here. Everyone looked into space. In the faraway galaxy, the entire galaxy was boiling like boiling water. Time and space were distorted. The person hadn't arrived, but the force was there. Just the force alone was enough to make the universe unbearable. If the deity himself came, wouldn't the universe collapse? Looking at the seething starry sky in the distance, Yi Xian also looked extremely serious. So powerful. This was definitely beyond the 9th rank. At this moment, Small Tower suddenly sighed softly. Yi Xian was confused. What are you sighing about? Xiao Ta said, Young master, I'm starting to feel sorry for you. Yi Xian frowned. Sorry for what? Xiao Ta said in a low voice, I realize that no matter how hard you work, there will always be a super enemy who is many times stronger than you. And this enemy is definitely someone you can't beat. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta continued, I suddenly feel that something is wrong with Master's methods. He wants to train you, but he hasn't considered that your enemy is not normal. I've said before that Master killed his way to the top, but I've neglected one problem. That was, he could kill his enemies. But young lord, you can't. Many times, even if you activate your bloodline and ignite your soul, you still can't kill your enemies. At this point it paused for a moment and said, Young master, you're really tragic. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta continued, Indeed, master rarely relies on others. However, other than Sister Tianming, there are very few enemies that are much stronger than him. But you, young master, are different. Your enemies are often many times stronger than you. Speaking of which, young lord, don't you have any opinion on this? Yi Xian said indifferently, What do you think I would think? Xiao Ta said, Tell master. Get him to help. Yi Xian shook his head. I used to think it was unfair, but now I don't think so anymore. Xiao Ta was puzzled. What? Yi Xian smiled and said, In this world there are far too many people who encounter injustice. Who are they going to complain to? If there's anyone to blame, then blame it on me, Yi Xian, for not being strong enough. And one more thing, father has given me a lot. Without him Xiao Ta said, Without him you still have Sister Tianming. Yi Xian was speechless. This small pagoda was trying to rebel against his father. At this moment, the entire universe suddenly became illusory. The universe was about to shatter. Seeing this, the Lord of Desolation City's face turned extremely solemn. The smile on the emperor's face disappeared without a trace. Mo Wuxian, the ancestor of the divine humans, was here. Mo Wuxian was not the first true god of the divine humans, but the rise of the divine humans was due to him. Therefore, the divine humans respected him as their ancestor because he was the one who brought the divine humans to glory. At this moment, a ray of white light suddenly fell into the starry sky. The white light dissipated and a middle-aged man appeared before everyone's eyes. Countless gods fell to their knees. Greetings, ancestor. Ancestor. It was the ancestor of the divine humans, Mo Wuxian. And it was his real body that had come. His real body. The moment he saw Mo Wuxian, the Lord of Desolation City slowly closed his eyes. A 10th rank expert. Mo Wuxian had surpassed the 9th rank. Mo Wuxian's gaze descended onto the Lord of Desolation City, and he slowly pressed his right hand down. The Lord of Desolation City opened his eyes, and a wisp of ferocity flashed through them as he shot into the sky. Bang! Everywhere the Lord of Desolation City passed, space and time distorted. Mo Wuxian's right hand suddenly descended. Bang! The Lord of Desolation City fell directly into the 4th layer of the spatial abyss, and his body was completely shattered. He was instantly killed. The countenances of all the experts from the demon race had turned pale when they witnessed this scene. We're finished? That was the only thought in their minds. On the other side, the true gods of the divine race became excited. The ancestor is invincible. The ancestor is invincible. For a time, countless experts of the true god race roared madly. Their voices were so loud that it was like thunder, and it spread through tens of thousands of galaxies. At this moment, all the experts in the boundless universe looked over. A 10th rank expert? All the experts were horrified. In an unknown galaxy, a swordsman suddenly stopped in front of a white starry hole. The swordsman wore a long white robe and he held a sword in his hand. The swordsman turned around and frowned. Who is calling himself invincible? He was a little displeased. Last time he met someone who called himself invincible, but what happened? That person was as weak as an ant, and he made a wasted trip. Now someone called himself invincible and he made such a big fuss. After a moment of silence, the swordsman looked at the white starry hole. Wait a moment. With that he turned and disappeared. Not just anyone could call himself invincible. It was fine if he didn't hear it. But if he heard it, he had to see it. In another galaxy, Mo Wuxian looked at the Lord of Desolation City who no longer had a body. I gave you a chance but you didn't cherish it. Now let me ask you, do you regret it? Regret? The Lord of Desolation City laughed. What's there to regret? Isn't it just a life? Just come and take it. Mo Wuxian nodded slightly. You have some backbone, I'll grant you your wish. With that, his right hand slowly pressed down. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above the Lord of Desolation City. He looked straight at Mo Wuxian and without a word he shot up into the sky. Mo Wuxian was expressionless. With that, his right hand pressed down. Boom. The sword light shattered and Yi Xian fell from the sky. Like the Lord of Desolation City, he fell into the space-time abyss again. If not for the green profound sword, the space-time abyss would have swallowed his soul. Inside the space-time abyss, Yi Xian's soul became illusory. He was no match for him. Not to mention that he wasn't a real 9th rank expert yet. Even if he was, he wouldn't be a match for Mo Wuxian. The gap between them was too huge. Mo Wuxian looked down at Yi Xian. I never imagined that the human race would actually develop to such a level. I really hadn't expected this. Yi Xian gazed at Mo Wuxian and smiled. There are many more that you can't imagine. Mo Wuxian stared at Yi Xian. Just now, my clansman told me that there are 2 formidable humans behind you. Since that's the case, why don't you let them meet you? Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he said, I can't contact them. But when he spoke up to hear, he gazed at Mo Wuxian. Since you're so strong, why don't you contact them yourself? Mo Wuxian chuckled. Contact them myself? Yi Xian nodded. Since you're so strong, you'll definitely be able to contact them. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the green profound sword flew over to Mo Wuxian. This is Qing'er's sword. I think that with your extraordinary ability, you should be able to contact her through this sword. Mo Wuxian was about to speak when Grand Elder Yanzhu spoke abruptly. Ancestor, I'm afraid it's a trap. Mo Wuxian glanced at Grand Elder Yanzhu. All of you remember that when your strength reaches a certain level, you can disregard all schemes and plots. Yanzhu fell silent. There was nothing wrong with that. Once one's strength reached a certain level, would one still have to fear schemes and plots? Mo Wuxian gazed at the green profound sword, and he instantly frowned when he saw it. In the next moment he opened his right palm and the sword fell into his grasp. As he looked at it, his brows furrowed. Who forged this sword? Yi Xian gazed at Mo Wuxian. You can use this sword to find the person who forged it. Mo Wuxian gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. Ignorant human, this sword is extraordinary indeed. However, that's all there is to it. You actually foolishly think that the person who forged it can save you. That's not just laughable, it's pitiful. As he spoke, the sword in his right hand shook slightly. Bang! The sword shook violently, and then a sword howl shot into the sky. At the same time, a ray of white light shot into the depths of the starry sky. He directly utilized the sword to open up a spatial passageway. To search for the woman in a plain dress. He traversed countless spaces with a single thought. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at Mo Wuxian. A rank 10 expert. That's a rank 10 expert. Could that woman in a plain dress compare to him? In the sky, Missouri Wuxian suddenly gazed at Yi Xian and he grinned. Human, I'll let you see what strength is. You know nothing about strength. If the person behind you appears later, then they'll fall into despair. Because I'm an invincible existence in this boundless universe, invincible in the truest sense of the word. Invincible? Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from the distant horizon. Everyone turned around and saw a swordsman in a cloud-white robe walking over slowly from afar. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw the person who'd arrived. Damn it! What's this big brother doing here? Mo Wuxian gazed at the swordsman, and he instantly frowned when he saw the swordsman. I can't see through him. He's actually unable to see through this human. The swordsman glanced at Yi Xian and then he grinned. I never expected that we'd meet again. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Big brother, what are you doing here? The swordsman smiled. I heard someone say he's invincible, so I'm here. Yi Xian was about to speak when Xiao Ta suddenly said, Big sister Tianming often says she's invincible as well. Why don't you go look for her? The swordsman was slightly stunned, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. Do you still want this pagoda? If you don't, I can destroy it for you. A single strike of my sword is enough. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta was speechless. But this feeling of being invincible is really lonely, Yi Xian said, Actually, I really want to experience this kind of loneliness. Swordsman was stunned, and then he smiled and said, Then you have to work hard. Yi Xian smiled and said, Big brother, can you help me with a small thing? Swordsman nodded. Big. Yi Xian glanced at the Lord and Emperor of Barren City in the distance. Big brother, these two friends of mine have reached their limits. I wonder if you can give them some guidance? Hearing this, the Lord and Emperor of Barren City were instantly excited. Damn it. They didn't sell their lives for nothing. Swordsman glanced at them and then he shook his head. I can't give them any guidance. Yi Xian was a little confused. Why not? Swordsman looked at the sword in his hand. I only train in the way of the sword, nothing else. Please continue to the next page. Yi Xian frowned. Only train in the way of the sword? Swordsman nodded. That's right. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Big brother, do you know about the fifth dimension? Swordsman shook his head. I don't. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. You didn't know? Yi Xian was shocked. Big brother, you don't know anything else apart from the way of the sword? Swordsman smiled. That's right. Yi Xian was silent. Swordsman. This big brother was a pure swordsman. A man who had trained swordsmen to the extreme. Hearing Swordsman's words, the governor and the emperor were a little disappointed. This swordsman in front of them was not just an ordinary person. Unfortunately, he only trained in the way of the sword and they weren't swordsmen. In other words, he couldn't give them any guidance. At this time, Swordsman said, As far as I know, Tianming seems to be good at this. You can ask her to guide your friends in the future. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. That's the only way. Swordsman nodded. They're still waiting for me. I have to go. Yi Xian quickly asked, Qing'er and Papa? Swordsman smiled. Yes. Yi Xian frowned. You formed a group? Swordsman said, Not really. We're just walking together for a while and we'll talk about it. You know what I mean. Yi Xian's expression became solemn. You won't get into a fight, right? Swordsman thought for a moment and said, I don't think so. Because we can't kill each other for now. Yi Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. Swordsman was about to speak when Mo Wuxian suddenly said fiercely, Human! Swordsman looked at Mo Wuxian. Mo Wuxian was slightly mad. Do you think you'll win for sure? Swordsman was quite happy. What other trump cards do you have? Come on, hurry up and use them. Mo Wuxian opened his right hand. There was a small command token in his hand, and it rose slowly before transforming into a flame that vanished into the depths of the starry sky. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Don't tell me you're going to summon your ancestor as well? Mo Wuxian glanced coldly at Yi Xian. Ignorant ant you, Swordsman suddenly drew his sword. Slap. A ray of sword light swept across Mo Wuxian's soul. Mo Wuxian's entire soul trembled violently before it became illusory. Swordsman gazed at Mo Wuxian. Be more polite to my little brother. Mo Wuxian was speechless. Right at this moment, the distant depths of the starry sky suddenly trembled violently, and then an enormous starship appeared above them. A group of extremely strange living beings stood on the starship. These living beings seemed like skeletons and they were tall and huge. Every single one of them emanated strange runes that flowed through their bodies. It was an extremely strange sight. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What living beings are they? Right at this moment, the desolate city lord suddenly exclaimed in shock. They're otherworldly demons. Otherworldly demons. The emperor's expression instantly changed drastically when he heard this. Yi Xian gazed at the two of them. What race are these otherworldly demons? The desolate city lord's face was slightly pale. Little friend, you might not know this, but the otherworldly demons were once living beings of this boundless universe. They were a level 3 civilization, but they surpassed the limits of their race in the end and became a level 4 civilization. After that, they left this boundless universe. Level 4 civilization. Yi Xian fell silent. He knew that the god race was a level 3 civilization, and in this boundless universe, there were no level 4 civilizations. In the distance, Mo Wuxian bowed respectfully to the group of otherworldly demons, and then he began to mumble something. No one understood him, not even the god race. However, the more Mo Wuxian spoke, the more agitated he became. Not only that, he even pointed at swordsmen from time to time. At this moment, that starship. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. One of the otherworldly demons on the starship looked at swordsman. He looked at swordsman for a moment and then he bowed slightly. Then he opened his palm and a ball of light slowly floated out from his palm. Finally, it landed in front of swordsman. At the same time, that otherworldly demon placed his right hand on his chest and bowed respectfully again. Seeing this scene, everyone present was dumbfounded. Mo Wuxian himself was dumbfounded. At this moment, his entire soul was trembling. The others might not understand the meaning of these otherworldly demons, but he did. The otherworldly demons only respected powerful beings, and the otherworldly demons gave swordsmen the ball of light as a gift to express their goodwill. Why would the otherworldly demons do this? There was only one explanation, and that was that swordsmen made these otherworldly demons feel threatened. It's over. This was the thought in Mo Wuxian's mind. Swordsman glanced at the ball of light in front of him and he frowned. He looked at the leading otherworldly demon. Are we not going to fight? The leading otherworldly demon immediately shook his head. He bowed respectfully again, and then he took out another ball of light. That ball of light slowly floated in front of swordsman. Beside Yi Xian, the emperor said softly, as expected of a race from a higher civilization, their intelligence is really high. At this moment, Yi Xian walked in front of swordsman. He glanced at the two balls of light and then said, "Big brother, do you want them?" Swordsman looked at Yi Xian. "Do you?" Yi Xian's face reddened, but he quickly recovered. He took the two balls of light in his hand. "I'm just a little curious." Swordsman laughed. "If you like them, I'll give them to you." Yi Xian quickly said, "How can I accept them?" Even so, he had already put the two balls of light away. The crowd was speechless. After putting away the balls of light, Yi Xian walked to the front of the starship. At this moment, the otherworldly demons were looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian pointed at swordsman below. "My big brother." The leading otherworldly demon hesitated for a moment, then took out another ball of light and handed it to Yi Xian. At the same time, a voice sounded in Yi Xian's mind. "Sir, please tell your big brother that the otherworldly demon race has no intention of making an enemy out of him." Yi Xian looked at the otherworldly demon. "Is my big brother very strong?" The leading otherworldly demon glanced at Yi Xian. "Can't you feel it?" Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then asked, "How strong is he?" The otherworldly demon was silent for a moment, then said, "I can't tell." "Can't tell." Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "My big brother has no intention of making an enemy out of the otherworldly demon race. Not only that, he is willing to befriend the otherworldly demon race." Hearing this, the leading otherworldly demon was elated. "Really?" Yi Xian nodded. "He said that the otherworldly demon race is a very powerful race and he wants me to befriend you, but I don't know if you are sincere." The otherworldly demon glanced at swordsman, then looked at Yi Xian. "Damn it. This human is trying to fool me." The otherworldly demon was silent for a moment, then he took out a token and handed it to Yi Xian. "Human sir, this is the otherworldly spirit token. With this token, you can come to the otherworldly demon race at any time." Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. No, I don't want it. If you want to give it to me, give it to my big brother." The otherworldly demon's expression froze. Giving this human a otherworldly spirit token was actually enough. But if he gave it to swordsman, a otherworldly spirit token? How could he take out such a trashy thing? He hesitated for a moment, then said, "Sir, please wait a moment, I will ask the patriarch." If he gave it to swordsman, a otherworldly spirit token was definitely not enough, and he could not give him anything better. He had to ask the patriarch. Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's fine, we can wait a moment." The otherworldly demon. End of this chapter. Chapter 1872. The otherworldly demon looked at Yi Xian with a strange expression. This human. At this moment, swordsman walked to Yi Xian's side and smiled. "With your status, why do you need to make friends with the otherworldly demons?" Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Father doesn't care about me, I can only rely on my own efforts to survive." The green-robed man. Swordsman thought for a moment, then looked at the otherworldly demon. "Where is the otherworldly demon tribe?" The otherworldly demon's expression changed drastically. He quickly said, "Your Excellency, the otherworldly demon tribe has no intention of becoming enemies with Your Excellency. This time it is purely a misunderstanding." As soon as his voice fell, the space in front of him suddenly trembled, and the next moment, an otherworldly demon walked out. This otherworldly demon was wearing a golden yellow robe and a golden crown on his head. Seeing this person, all the otherworldly demons in the field hurriedly bowed respectfully. The otherworldly demon king. The otherworldly demon king's gaze fell on Swordsman. Swordsman did not waste any time and raised his sword. The otherworldly demon king's pupils suddenly shrank, and his right hand pressed forward lightly. Boom. In an instant, endless space-time pressure suddenly swept over. The space-time pressure of the fifth layer. Yi Xian's expression was a little grave. At first he thought that Mo Wuxian had mastered the fifth layer, but in fact that was not the case. Mo Wuxian had only combined the first and fourth layers. However, this was still terrifying. But the other party had not mastered the fifth layer. And the otherworldly demon king before him had truly mastered the fifth layer. Countless overlapping space-time forces crushed toward Swordsman's sword light. At this moment, the entire human universe trembled. However, when the space-time pressure touched Swordsman's sword light, boom. All the space-time pressure disappeared, and at the same time, a sword was pressed against the otherworldly demon king's forehead. Defeated. On the other side, Mo Wuxian, who hadn't died yet, started trembling when he saw this scene. In front of Swordsman, the otherworldly demon king was silent for a moment, then bowed slightly. "I lost." Keeping his sword, Swordsman looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Little guy, they're still waiting for me. See you later." Saying this, he turned and left, disappearing in the distant Star River Pure Land in the blink of an eye. Gone. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. This big brother, he came fast and left fast. The otherworldly demon king suddenly walked up to Yi Xian. He opened his palm, and a golden ring slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. Spirit ring. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. The otherworldly demon king smiled. The otherworldly demon king chuckled softly. Spirit ring. Seeing this ring is equivalent to seeing me. All otherworldly demons who see this ring have to obey my commands unconditionally. As if sensing Yi Xian's worries, the otherworldly demon king said, "Young friend, there's no need to worry about anything else. My otherworldly demon race will be by your side the entire time. Of course, I hope that you can represent our otherworldly demon race to participate in the exhibition." Hearing those words, Yi Xian immediately understood. The other party's target was the Cyan Profound Sword. The otherworldly demon king continued, "There will be many powerful races appearing at the exhibition. Young friend, you can participate in it." Hearing those words, Yi Xian smiled. "All right." The otherworldly demon king nodded. "Young friend, if you have no other matters to attend to, you can follow me to the otherworldly demon race." Yi Xian said with a deep voice, "I still have some matters that I need to attend to this." The otherworldly demon king smiled. "It's fine." As he spoke, he took out a token and passed it over to Yi Xian. "This is the spatial teleportation token. Young friend, activate it and you will be able to reach our otherworldly demon race within 2 hours." Yi Xian kept the spatial teleportation token and said with a smile, "That's great." The otherworldly demon king nodded. "I'll be waiting for you at the otherworldly demon race." As he spoke, he prepared to lead the otherworldly demons away. At this moment, Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Wait a moment, I have a presumptuous request." The otherworldly demon king smiled. "Speak." Yi Xian glanced at the desolate city lord and Emperor Jun in the distance. "Senior, my 2 friends have already reached their limits. May I ask if Senior can guide them a little so that they can break through their limits?" Hearing those words, the desolate city lord and Emperor Jun were moved. This young master Yi hasn't forgotten about them. Their lives were truly worth it. The otherworldly demon king glanced at the desolate city lord and Emperor Jun before saying, "This is a small matter. If the 2 of you are willing, you can follow me to the otherworldly demon race." The desolate city lord hurriedly said, "Yes. That's a level 4 starfield." Emperor Jun. "If this chapter is not complete, please flip the page." The desolate city lord also hurriedly said, "Yes. I'm willing." The otherworldly demon king nodded, and then he waved his right hand lightly. 2 teleportation formations suddenly appeared beneath their feet. Meanwhile, he seemed to have thought of something and he gazed at Shaoan. He thought for a moment, and then he flicked his finger, causing a ball of light to appear in front of Shaoan. Shaoan glanced at the otherworldly demon king. "What's this?" The otherworldly demon king said, "It's a legacy ball." This ball contains the complete legacy of a rank 10 expert. You can attain rank 10 once you absorb it. Rank 10. Xiao An's expression changed when she heard this. However, she didn't take it and she turned around to look at Yi Xian instead. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, it's a gesture of kindness. Please accept it. Xiao An nodded and put the ball of light away. The otherworldly demon king gazed at Yi Xian. Farewell. As he spoke, he and the otherworldly demons by his side started to fade. Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared here. It was none other than Jingji. Jingji gazed at Yi Xian with a pleading gaze. She knew that as long as Yi Xian spoke, her fate would change. Yi Xian looked at Jingji and said with a smile, Miss Jingji, what can I do for you? Jingji said in a deep voice, Young Master Yi, for the sake of our previous relationship, Yi Xian walked up to Jingji and smiled, We're not familiar. After saying this, he turned around and left with Xiao, and Jingji's expression froze. In the distance, the otherworldly demon king glanced at Jingji before withdrawing his gaze. In the next moment, he and the otherworldly demons disappeared. Jingji was silent. She knew that she would never have the chance to reach rank 9 or above in this lifetime. Cultivate by herself? The divine race had a deep foundation, but how many rank 9 experts did they have? There were only a few. If Jingji didn't have anyone to help her, she wouldn't even be able to reach rank 6 or 7, let alone rank 9. However, Xiao An had reached the heavens in a single step. She had truly reached the heavens in a single step. Thinking of this, Jingji slowly closed her eyes. At this moment, she recalled her father's words. You're not as good as Xiao An. She was not convinced, so she joined forces with outsiders to pull Xiao An down. Now, it was proven that she was indeed not as good as Xiao An. From now on, there would be a gap between her and Xiao An that she would never be able to cross. In some unknown starry sky, the plain-dressed woman and the green-robed man slowly walked into the distance. Not far in front of the two of them, there was a city wall that spanned across the starry sky. Behind the city wall was a tall tower. The green-robed man glanced behind him and frowned. What is Brother Xiao doing? Why isn't he here yet? At this moment, the space in front of the two of them suddenly trembled. In the next moment, a shadow appeared in front of the two of them. The green-robed man smiled slightly. I'm just passing by. The shadow glanced at the two of them and narrowed his eyes. This road is blocked. Leave quickly or you'll have to bear the consequences. The plain-dressed woman suddenly took out a portrait. This is my brother. The green-robed man. The shadow glanced at the portrait in the plain-dressed woman's hand, and then he frowned slightly and was slightly displeased. What's the relationship between your brother and me? You're ridiculous. The plain-dressed woman pointed with her fingers. The shadow's physical body collapsed, and only his soul was left. The shadow's eyes were wide open and they were filled with terror. Did I say something wrong? Chapter 1873. The figure was completely dumbfounded. What did he say? His body was gone? The green-robed man glanced at the plain-dressed woman and was about to speak. Suddenly, an angry roar resounded from within the city wall. How dare you? As the voice fell, a terrifying pressure suddenly swept out from within the city wall. In an instant, the space around the plain-dressed woman became illusory. The woman in the plain dress stared at a spot not far away from her with an expressionless face. She didn't make a move and allowed that powerful force to slam into her body. In an instant, that powerful force disappeared without a trace. It was like a pebble falling into the sea, disappearing without a trace. This, following a shocked voice, an afterimage appeared in front of the plain-dressed woman and the green-robed man. The afterimage gradually solidified. Its appearance was not particularly different from that of a human, but its skin was dark purple, and so were its eyes. The green-robed man sized up the creature in front of him. What race are you from? The creature glanced at the green-robed man and said, The Illusion Tribe. The green-robed man nodded slightly. The man from the Illusion Tribe cupped his fists. You are? The green-robed man smiled. We are not interested in the Illusion Tribe. At this moment, the plain-dressed woman suddenly opened her palm. In the next moment, a sword flew out from her hand and in an instant, the sword was pressed against the forehead of the man from the Illusion Tribe. The expression of the man from the Illusion Tribe froze. The plain-dressed woman took out a portrait of Yi Xian. My brother. Do you understand? The green-robed man felt a headache coming on. The man from the Illusion Tribe hurriedly said, Yes. He was not stupid. How could he not understand? The plain-dressed woman put away her sword and waved her sleeves. In an instant, the space around the man from the Illusion Tribe fluctuated like waves. The man from the illusion tribe's eyes were filled with shock. The plain-dressed woman suddenly walked to the right. The green-robed man looked at the plain-dressed woman. "Where are you going?" The plain-dressed woman did not answer and disappeared into the distance. At this moment, the man from the illusion tribe looked in the direction where the plain-dressed woman had left and said with a trembling voice, "Thank you for your guidance." The green-robed man was about to speak when he suddenly turned around. Not far away, a ray of sword light appeared. Then a swordsman walked over. Swordsman glanced at the green-robed man's side. "Where's Tianming?" The green-robed man shrugged. "Let's go." Swordsman frowned. "Gone?" The green-robed man nodded. "Forget about her. Let's go." With that, he rode his sword and disappeared into the distance. Swordsman pondered for a moment before disappearing into the distance as well. The man from the illusion race wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. What kind of creatures were these three? It was actually so terrifying. As if he'd thought of something, he opened up his palm, and the portrait left behind by the woman in a simple dress appeared before him. After looking at the portrait for a long time, he suddenly said, "Make 100,000 copies of this portrait. I want every single clansman to have a copy. If you encounter this person, notify me immediately." As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at the space in front of him, and his expression grew even more solemn. In that instant just now, the woman in a plain dress had directly sent him into the 7th layer of space. Although it was only for a moment, he had already experienced the mysteries of the 7th layer of spacetime. To him, this was undoubtedly the opening of a new door. Azure Province inside the palace. Yi Xian sat on the dragon throne with Tuoba Yen in his arms. Tuoba Yen nestled in Yi Xian's arms and asked softly, "Are you all right now?" Yi Xian nodded. "The crisis of humanity has been resolved. Now, I'm going to explore the outside world." Tuoba Yen looked up at Yi Xian. "The outside world?" Yi Xian smiled. "Yes. Do you want to see the outside world together?" Tuoba Yen shook his head. "The human world hasn't been sorted out yet. Why would I want to go outside?" Hearing this, Yi Xian fell silent. The current human race had already come into contact with the civilizations of the universe outside. However, the entire human race was really very weak in the vast universe. If an outside civilization invaded human civilization with the current strength of humanity, they would not be able to resist at all. Thinking of this, Yi Xian said solemnly, "You reminded me." Tuoba Yen looked at Yi Xian. "You want to manage the entire human race?" Yi Xian looked at Tuoba Yen and said with a smile, "Tell me what you think." Tuoba Yen shook his head. "You won't be able to manage it. Although the human race has resolved the crisis this time, many people don't even know about it. If you forcefully manage it, it will only be a thankless effort." Yi Xian fell silent. Tuoba Yen said again, "Leading the entire human race forward is too tiring. I don't want you to be so tired." Yi Xian's right hand slipped restlessly into Tuoba Yen's clothes and said with a smile, "That's true." Tuoba Yen rolled his eyes at Yi Xian. "Haven't you asked for enough?" Yi Xian laughed. "Even 10 times a day isn't enough." Tuoba Yen, soon, some discordant voices came from the hall. On the 3rd day Yi Xian left Qingqing. He did not head directly to the otherworldly demonic tribe but entered Xiaota. Cultivate. He was going to consolidate his cultivation at rank 9. Other than that, he also obtained 3 white balls of light from the otherworldly demonic tribe. All 3 balls of light contained an inheritance. The otherworldly demonic tribe was very interesting. When they reappeared, they were already in a spacetime. Yi Xian was stunned. The spacetime around him was stacked layer by layer like a tall building. Yi Xian said solemnly, "The 5th dimension?" Little Soul giggled, "Yes. Young master, as long as you take me, you can appear in the 5th dimension. Not only that, the spacetime pressure here can't hurt you at all." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Why can't it hurt me?" Little Soul smiled. "I don't know. In any case, you're holding me now, so the spacetime pressure can't pose any threat to you." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then took a few steps forward. He had just taken a few steps when he felt countless terrifying spacetime pressures, but he seemed to be transparent, and the spacetime pressure had no effect on him. What was going on? Yi Xian frowned. Could it be that the Cyan Profound Sword had unlocked a new function after its breakthrough? Immunity to spacetime? At this thought, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Was he already immune to spacetime? At this thought, Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Little Soul, can you feel the next dimension?" Little Soul said, "Yes." As she spoke, the spacetime around Yi Xian suddenly changed. Soon Yi Xian appeared in a spacetime vortex. At first glance, it was an endless spacetime vortex. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Was this the sixth dimension? Yi Xian gulped. He glanced around. The whole vortex exuded endless spacetime pressure, and the strength of this spacetime pressure was at least 100 times stronger than the fifth dimension. Intuition told him that a wisp of spacetime pressure could easily obliterate him. Damn. This was too exciting. Yi Xian asked again, "Little soul, can we go to the next dimension?" After a moment of silence, Little Soul said, "Yes." With that, the space around Yi Xian changed, and soon Yi Xian appeared in a pitch-black darkness. Yi Xian frowned. "This is." Little Soul said, "It seems to be the seventh dimension." Yi Xian glanced around and all he could see was darkness. A spacetime black hole. The seventh dimension was a spacetime black hole? Yi Xian carefully sensed his surroundings. Gradually, his expression became extremely solemn. There was also spacetime pressure in this endless spacetime black hole, and it was at least 100 times stronger than the sixth layer spacetime pressure. This was too terrifying. Little Soul said again, "Young master, I have already felt the next dimension." Yi Xian was silent, and a great plan slowly formed in his mind. Chapter 1874. Under the guidance of Little Soul, Yi Xian came to the eighth layer of time and space. As soon as he arrived at the eighth layer of time and space, Yi Xian was stunned. Because he found that in front of him, there was a person who looked exactly like him. What's going on? He frowned. At this time, the him in front of him also frowned. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly let Little Soul take him out of the eighth layer of time and space. After returning to reality, Yi Xian's expression was extremely solemn. At that moment he suddenly felt a little flustered, or rather, afraid from the bottom of his heart. What kind of time and space was that? Why was there another him? Was that him real? There was no answer. Little Soul did not know either. After a moment, Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "It seems that I have to ask Qing'er when I see him in the future." He did not dare to continue to explore the ninth layer of time and space. He was afraid that he would play himself to death. Yi Xian put away the azure profound sword, then took out the teleportation token given to him by the spiritual king, and the next moment he disappeared. Heavenly Spirit Universe, Otherworldly Spirit World. When Yi Xian opened his eyes, he was already in the palace of the Otherworldly Spirit World. At this time, an old otherworldly spirit suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man bowed respectfully to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, the patriarch has been waiting for a long time." Yi Xian smiled slightly. "Please lead the way." The old spiritual king bowed slightly. "Follow me." After saying that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian followed the old spiritual king into a hall. In the hall, there was only the spiritual king. Seeing Yi Xian, the spiritual king got up, walked in front of Yi Xian and smiled slightly. "Little friend Yi." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Senior, this exhibition you asked me to participate in, it shouldn't be that simple, right?" The spiritual king nodded. "To be honest, this time I invited you to participate in the divine item exhibition is to ask for your help." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What kind of favor?" The otherworldly demonic king replied. "There are 3 superpowers in the Tianling cosmos. Other than our otherworldly demonic tribe, there's also the Nether Spirit tribe and the Heaven Sanctum. On the other hand, the otherworldly demonic tribe is the sworn enemy of the Heaven Sanctum. Every single divine artifact exhibition, the 2 of us would compete with one another, and the loser would be humiliated." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior wants to use my sword?" The otherworldly spirit king chuckled. "That's right." Yi Xian was silent. He hadn't forgotten that the otherworldly demonic tribe had declared that they were mortal enemies. If he were to help the otherworldly demonic tribe, he would be making a powerful enemy out of nowhere. The otherworldly demonic king suddenly spoke up. "Young friend, your 2 friends have already reached 10 Dan. Not only so, with the help of our otherworldly demonic tribe, they should be able to reach 11 Dan very soon. Other than that, I have also sent my men to keep an eye on the humans. With our otherworldly demonic tribe around, no one will be able to harm the humans." With that said, he opened his palm, and a ball of light appeared in front of Yi Xian. This ball of light was nearly twice the size of the one he had given Shaoan. The otherworldly demonic king said, "Young friend, this ball contains the heritage of a former king of our otherworldly demonic tribe. If you absorb it, you will be able to reach at least 12 Dan. Not only so, you will be able to grasp many spacetime arts. Of course, even if young friend is unwilling to help our otherworldly demonic tribe, we will still gift this to you. Of course, I have to remind you that helping our otherworldly demonic tribe will only result in offending the Heaven Sanctum. However, rest assured, our otherworldly demonic tribe will deal with the heaven's sanctum. We won't allow them to harm you." As he spoke, he passed the ball of light over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. He was really a smart person. He hadn't done anything at all, but he had already received so many benefits from the other party. It was clear that the other party was making it hard for him to turn them down. Yi Xian fell silent. His guess was that the other party was trying to drag him down with them. To be more precise, the other party was trying to drag his big brother down with him. It wasn't that his thoughts were complicated, but that he had a clear mind. What right did the other party have to treat him, Yi Xian? Was it because he was handsome? Clearly not. As the king of such a fearsome race, everything he did was for the sake of his race. Such a person wouldn't mix personal emotions into his actions. As such, it was impossible for the other party to do so out of admiration for him, Yi Xian. There had to be a scheme behind it. And this scheme was definitely his big brother's doing. And he couldn't let his emotions get the better of him. Most of the time, there was no such thing as camaraderie between races. There was only mutual benefit. With such thoughts in mind, Yi Xian turned to the otherworldly demonic king and said with a smile, "Elder, take a look at my sword." As he spoke, he passed the green profound sword over to the otherworldly demonic king. The otherworldly demonic king glanced at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand, and in the next instant, his face warped in shock. This sword has grown stronger?" Yi Xian nodded. "That's right." As he spoke, the green profound sword dived into the fifth layer of spacetime. Upon seeing this sight, the otherworldly demonic king narrowed his eyes. The fifth layer of spacetime. The sword had actually dived into the fifth layer of spacetime. But if he only takes benefits without doing anything, the otherworldly demon king laughed and said, "I don't believe that his skin is that thick." Under the lead of the otherworldly demon king, Yi Xian arrived at the spirit god pavilion. As soon as he entered the spirit god pavilion, an extremely pure spiritual energy rushed toward him. The otherworldly demon king bowed slightly and said, "Young Master Yi, rest well." After saying those words, he left the room. Yi Xian entered Xiao Ta's body and took out the inheritance orb that the otherworldly demon king had given him. He infused his Shen Qi into it, and the orb disappeared into his glabella. In an instant, countless information surged into his mind. Rank 10 expert. In order to reach rank 10, one had to overlap the spacetime of the first layer to the fourth layer, forming a spacetime overlap. Just like Namo Wuxian. Naturally, it was not easy to achieve this. However, there was a method in the inheritance orb. Yi Xian realized that the inheritance orb was really like cheating. It was a complete duplication. Strength came too easily. It was because the otherworldly demonic tribe had such a method that they were able to maintain the number of experts in their tribe. When an expert fell, it wouldn't take long for the tribe to groom another expert. Under such circumstances, as long as the otherworldly demonic tribe did not provoke a civilization of a higher level, ordinary civilizations would not be able to stand against them. Of course, this kind of inheritance light ball also had a flaw, and that was that it was too easy to obtain strength. Moreover, it was all the path that the inheritor had taken. Under such circumstances, it was almost impossible for the inheritor to surpass the original owner. In the otherworldly demonic tribe, there was basically no one who could surpass the original owner. This was a huge flaw. Nevertheless, the inheritance orb was still something that countless otherworldly demonic tribe dreamed of. This was cheating. Normally, it would take at least 100,000 years to reach rank 10. However, with the inheritance orb, it would take less than 10,000 years. This shortened the time required by at least 10 times. At this moment, Yi Xian was hesitating. Should I use it or not? Without much hesitation, he decided to use it. Of course, he wouldn't copy the other party completely. He needed to learn from the other party's experience, especially the other party's manipulation of spacetime. This was what he wanted to learn the most at the moment. Time passed quickly. The next day, the otherworldly demon elder arrived at the door of Yi Xian's room. He bowed slightly and said, "Young Master Yi, the God item exhibition is about to begin." A moment later, the door opened, and Yi Xian appeared in front of the otherworldly demon elder. The otherworldly demon elder bowed slightly again and said, "Young Master Yi, the chief is waiting outside." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Let's go." Yi Xian followed the otherworldly demon elder to the entrance of the palace. The otherworldly demon king was already waiting there. The otherworldly demon king smiled and said, "Little friend Yi, let's walk there. On the way, I will explain the Tianling universe to you." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I also want to know more about this universe." The otherworldly demon king nodded and led Yi Xian into the distance. On the way, the otherworldly demon king said, "Little friend Yi, may I ask which civilization the creator of this sword came from? Which civilization did Qing'er come from?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Probably from a civilization called Invincible, Otherworldly Demon King. P.S. The new year is coming and I'm going to be busy. I'm saving up my manuscripts so that I can play for a few days during the new year. I don't have enough updates so I don't like it. Anyway, I will work hard to save more manuscripts and strive for more and more. Also, does anyone want to walk on? If you do, you can leave your name in the book review section. I will choose a few more eye-catching cameos. If you have any suggestions, feel free to tell me. I will try my best to reply. As for the votes, don't vote. I haven't updated much and sometimes I'm a little weak. Give me the votes, I'm a little ashamed." Chapter 1875. What civilization does the Qing'er belong to? Yi Xian really didn't know. In any case, as far as he was concerned, Qing'er was invincible. From the moment he met Qing'er, she had always been invincible. When he met the god race, he thought that the god race who had created the human race could break the myth of the Qing'er's invincibility. However, it turned out that the god race who had created the human race was like an ant in front of the Qing'er. Just how strong was she? He didn't know, but the moment he asked, it was invincible. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the otherworldly spirit king fell silent. Invincible. To him, saying that it was invincible was a little exaggerated. However, there was no need to doubt the strength of the person who had created the sword. The other party was at least an expert from a level 5 civilization. A level 5 civilization. With such a thought in mind, the otherworldly spirit king's expression became a little complicated. The otherworldly demonic tribe had been striving for innumerable years to reach the level of a tier 5 civilization. But even now, there was no hope at all. He had never thought that a human could reach a level 5 civilization. Even the god race who had created the human race was only a level 3 civilization. The human race was about to rise. The otherworldly spirit king sighed deeply. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Senior, is there a level 5 civilization in the heavenly spirit universe?" The otherworldly spirit king shook his head. "No." Yi Xian frowned. "Not before." The otherworldly spirit king hesitated for a moment before he said, "A very long time ago, there was an extremely powerful race in this universe called the spirit beast race. They were originally demon beasts and their strength was mediocre. However, an extraordinary genius appeared in their race, Ye Yao. This beast reached the legendary 14th stage and stepped into the 6th layer of spacetime. Because of his breakthrough, the entire beast race's bloodline broke through its shackles and evolved into a spirit. Under Ye Yao's lead, the spirit beast race entered a level 5 civilization. However, for some unknown reason they completely disappeared. According to our speculations, they either encountered an invincible civilization, or they left the heavenly spirit universe." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Once your bloodline reaches a certain level, you can also enter a higher civilization?" The otherworldly spirit king chuckled. "Of course." Yi Xian furrowed his brows and was a little puzzled. His bloodline wasn't bad. Why was he still so weak? Could father have done something to it? The otherworldly spirit king continued, "The heavenly spirit cosmos is also facing a huge problem. Once this problem erupts, the entire heavenly spirit cosmos will be in chaos." Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and turned to the otherworldly spirit king. "A huge problem?" The spirit king nodded. "There is a problem with the spiritual energy." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Is the spiritual energy in this universe not enough?" The otherworldly spirit king said, "Of course it's not enough. You should know that any expert who has reached a certain level can easily live for hundreds of thousands of years. The longer a person lives, the greater their need for the spiritual chi of this world. The heavenly spirit universe has a history of at least 1,000,000,000,000 years since its birth, and over these years the living beings of this universe have been absorbing the spiritual chi of this universe without any restraint. Now it can be said that it has reached the end of the line. If we can't break through to a level 5 civilization and leave this universe will start killing each other." Yi Xian asked, "Elder, you mentioned that there are 3 superpowers in this universe. Other than the otherworldly demonic tribe, there's also the netherworld tribe and the heaven's sanctum, right?" The otherworldly spirit king nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian said, "Elder, can you tell me more about those 2 superpowers?" The otherworldly spirit king smiled. "Of course. The netherworld tribe is a special race. They live in the land of Een. They love the aura of death and they are good at seducing souls. They are a very strange race. Even the otherworldly demonic tribe doesn't want to provoke them. Of course we aren't afraid of them either. They don't come out much either and they usually stay in the realm of Yin. At this point he looked at Yi Xian and said seriously, little friend, remember, don't step into the realm of Yin if you don't have anything to do. It's not a place that ordinary living beings can stay in. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Elder, now that you mention it, I have a feeling that I might appear in that place in the future. The otherworldly spirit king frowned. What? Yi Xian shook his head. Intuition. The otherworldly spirit king, Yi Xian said again, Elder, tell me more about the heaven's sanctum. The otherworldly spirit king's face gradually turned cold. The heaven's sanctum was originally an organization of unaffiliated cultivators. However, as it grew larger and larger, there are all kinds of living beings in it. There seems to be a human among them. Yi Xian frowned. A human? The otherworldly spirit king nodded. There seems to be a human among them. Yi Xian's curiosity was piqued. At this moment, the otherworldly spirit king suddenly said, little friend, we have arrived. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and raised his head. There was a huge palace in the air not too far away. The palace seemed to be made out of crystal, and the outer walls were smooth like mirrors. Furthermore, it was rotating slowly, looking extremely luxurious. The otherworldly spirit king said, this is the Odd Crystal Palace. Usually, if our otherworldly demonic tribe has any auctions, we will hold it here. After the exhibition of the god item, there will be a batch of god items being auctioned here. If little friend is interested, you can buy them. Yi Xian blinked his eyes. What do you want to buy them with? The otherworldly spirit king opened his palm, and a dark purple crystal appeared in his hand. This is a heavenly crystal, the currency of our celestial spirit cosmos. Heavenly crystals are divided into low-grade, high-grade, and supreme-grade. A supreme-grade heavenly crystal is sufficient for a stage 10 expert to cultivate for a year. As he spoke, he smiled. Cultivation is actually very expensive. Little friend should have experienced it, right? Yi Xian shook his head. I have never been short of money. The otherworldly spirit king's expression froze. Just as Yi Xian said he had never been short of money, cultivation resources? He really had never been short of money. At this moment, a female otherworldly spirit walked in front of them. The female otherworldly spirit said, Royal Father. As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, nice to meet you. The otherworldly spirit king smiled. Little friend, she is my daughter, Yiqin. Yi Xian smiled. Nice to meet you, Miss Yiqin. Yiqin smiled. Royal Father, young Master Yi, the exhibition is about to begin. Let's take a seat. The otherworldly spirit king nodded. Little friend Yi, please. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, please. The otherworldly spirit king smiled. Let's go together. In front of Yi Xian, he really did not dare to be careless. After the three of them entered Heavenly Crystal Hall, Yi Xian discovered that the interior of Heavenly Crystal Hall was extremely large. There was no obstruction at the top, and one could see the blue sky and white clouds with a single glance. At the center of Heavenly Crystal Hall, there was a huge circular platform. The circular platform was over a dozen zhang tall. On the circular platform stood an otherworldly spirit female, and around the circular platform were huge floating chairs. At this moment, there were already people sitting on the floating chairs. Clearly, they were here to participate in the divine object exhibition. The otherworldly spirit king brought Yi Xian to the seat at the very front and sat down. He turned his head to the right. Not far away there was a middle-aged man sitting there. The middle-aged man had two horns on his head, and there was a faint smile on his face. When Yi Xian sat down, he glanced at Yi Xian. Beside Yi Xian, the otherworldly spirit king said, This person is the current Heaven's Sanctum Master, Mu Tian from the Rhino Spirit Clan. Yi Xian glanced at Mu Tian. Unfathomable. Mu Tian suddenly looked at Yi Xian and smiled. This little brother is? Yi Xian smiled. Human race Yi Xian. Human race? Mu Tian smiled. So it's young Master Yi of the human race. It's an honor to meet you. Yi Xian was speechless. Honor my A**s. Do you know me? The otherworldly spirit king smiled. Manor Master Mu, I wonder what divine object your heaven's sanctum has brought this time? I'm looking forward to it. Mu Tian laughed. He didn't answer the otherworldly spirit king. Instead he looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Young Master Yi should be new to the heavenly spirit cosmos. I have something to give to young Master Yi. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a divine object appeared in his hand. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly smiled. There's no need for that. Hearing this, Mu Tian was stunned. The otherworldly spirit king beside Yi Xian looked at Yi Xian with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Yi Xian smiled. Manor Master Mu, thank you for your kindness. If I need anything, I will look for the otherworldly demonic tribe. Mu Tian's smile gradually disappeared. The otherworldly spirit king laughed. Young friend Yi, if you need anything, feel free to tell us. As long as the otherworldly demonic tribe has it, we will not be stingy. Yi Xian smiled. Thank you. Is Mu Tian expressing goodwill? No. Yi Xian knew that the other party was trying to drive a wedge between him and the otherworldly demonic tribe. If he were to accept Mu Tian's gift, the otherworldly demonic tribe would surely feel displeased. Would he be able to form a good relationship with the Heaven's Sanctum? No. The Heaven's Sanctum had never seen his big brother's strength before, so it was impossible for the other party to respect him as much as the otherworldly demonic tribe did. There was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. One had to be more vigilant in order to survive in the outside world. One mustn't be blinded by the benefits before them. Mu Tian glanced at Yi Xian and chuckled. After which, he retracted his gaze and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Beside Yi Xian, the otherworldly spirit king revealed a smile. A human? At this moment, a light chuckle sounded not too far away from him. Yi Xian turned around and saw a man standing not too far away. A human? Yi Xian was taken aback. Was that the human expert who had walked out from the human cosmos? Beside Yi Xian, the otherworldly spirit king said, his name is Ling Tian and he's a human expert. He's currently an elder of the Heaven's Sanctum, a rank 12 pinnacle expert. Ling Tian walked over to Mu Tian's side, and he turned to Yi Xian with a smile. To think that after so many years, a human expert would finally emerge from the human race. Yi Xian chuckled. Indeed, it isn't easy for the human race. At this moment, Mu Tian suddenly burst into laughter. Elder Ling Tian, as the #1 expert of the human race, why don't you tell us about the human race so that we can understand it better? Yi Xian frowned. #1 expert of the human race? Mu Tian turned to Yi Xian and chuckled. Elder Ling Tian is the #1 expert of the human race. What? Do you have a problem with that? Yi Xian glanced at Ling Tian. Was the #1 expert of the human race, self-proclaimed. Chapter 1876. Ancestor Summoning. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. How arrogant. He actually dared to make the Heaven's Sanctum summoning ancestor summoning. However, all the experts in the surroundings fell silent when they saw Yi Xian's azure sword, and their expressions gradually became solemn. The 6th layer of spacetime. The sword actually entered the 6th layer of spacetime. The 6th layer of spacetime. After all, even Mu Tian and the otherworldly demonic king were only at the 13th stage, and they could only enter the 5th layer of spacetime. However, this human could actually enter the 6th layer of spacetime. Mu Tian stared at Yi Xian with an extremely solemn expression. The sword before him had really surpassed the 5th layer of spacetime. Who exactly is this human? Mu Tian wasn't the only one, even the otherworldly demonic king was stunned. He didn't expect Yi Xian to be able to enter the 6th layer of spacetime. After all, Yi Xian was only at the 9th stage of spacetime. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Master Mu Tian, I'm still waiting for you to summon your ancestor. Mu Tian hesitated for a moment before he cupped his fists. Sir, I was rude just now. Please don't take it to heart. Yi Xian looked at Mu Tian, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Do you really believe that I won't take it to heart just because you said so? Mu Tian's expression became slightly unsightly. Yi Xian suddenly grinned and opened his palm, and the azure sword flew into his hand. Since Master Mu Tian doesn't want to summon your ancestor, then let's have a spar. I'll be responsible for my own life and death. He'll be responsible for his own life and death. All the experts looked at Mu Tian. Would Mu Tian dare to accept the challenge? Mu Tian's expression was extremely unsightly. If he refused, how could he continue living in this world? However, if he accepted the challenge, then it would be a life and death battle. This human before him was so mysterious and he had no confidence at all. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, You're not going to accept the challenge and you're not giving me any benefits. Master Mu Tian, what's the meaning of this? Give me benefits? Mu Tian was stunned and then he hurriedly said, Please forgive me for my rudeness just now. With that said, a storage ring silently appeared in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn, this person has some skills. He didn't even sense any spatial fluctuations before the storage ring appeared in his hand. He might not be able to beat them. Yi Xian naturally had to stop while he was ahead. Otherwise, wouldn't he be embarrassed if the other party really summoned his ancestor? Although he could enter the 8th spacetime continuum or even the 9th spacetime continuum, he could only go in and do nothing else. This move could only be used to scare people. Yi Xian glanced at the storage ring on his hand. There were a total of 100,000 supreme-grade heaven crystals in it. It was enough for a long time. Yi Xian sheathed the azure profound sword. Forget it. Hearing this, Mu Tian relaxed. He was truly a little afraid of Yi Xian. Furthermore, there was no need for the Heaven's Sanctum to provoke an expert like Yi Xian. Spending some money to resolve this matter naturally couldn't be any better. However, he was still slightly worried because Yi Xian was very close to the otherworldly demonic race. At this moment, a slightly hoarse voice suddenly resounded from the side. Young Master Yi. Yi Xian turned around and saw a black-clothed expert floating not too far away. This black-clothed expert's entire body was covered in black clothes, and his true appearance couldn't be seen. Moreover, there was an extremely dense spirit death energy around him. The otherworldly spirit king by Yi Xian's side said in a low voice, "This is the patriarch of the nether spirit race, Ming Dao." Yi Xian nodded slightly and looked at Ming Dao. "Do you need something?" Ming Dao looked at Yi Xian. "After this exhibition ends, I wonder if young Master Yi would do me the honor of visiting my spirit dimension." Yi Xian smiled. Qingqing Yi family ancestral hall, ancestors above. Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be removed, and Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man wearing a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders. What? At this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly resounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old, and her two small hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's blood sister. This time, when she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you remove his title for no reason?" The great elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. "This is a family matter, what are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the family and his life is uncertain. But the family is using a groundless excuse to remove his crown prince position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he is removed or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away from me." At this moment, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder said coldly, "Then flog 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi mansion rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years, and even now he is fighting for the family, but the family is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang, and he knew that his chance to show off had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position, and it is everyone's wish. What are you shouting for?" As he said this, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. The crisp sound of the slap was heard, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen, but she did not cry. She just covered her cheek with her hand. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "I'm Zhang Mu, greeting the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. "I will go through fire and water for the crown prince, and I will risk my life for you." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall, so don't show any mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly saw something and he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes and his face was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu once more. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Qingqing Yi Clan Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue? From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. What? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting?" Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged, "Discard him or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now he is risking his life for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to see something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. Yi Xian naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony, and he put it away with a smile. "Thank you." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Meanwhile, Black Robe suddenly said, "May I know where you're from?" Yi Xian stopped and said with a smile, "What?" Black Robe asked, "Are you selling this sword?" Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. "You want to buy this sword?" Black Robe nodded. "You can name a price. We can discuss any conditions." Yi Xian smiled. "Let me think about it." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Seeing that Yi Xian didn't directly refuse, Black Robe's tightly clenched right hand slowly loosened. Since he didn't directly refuse, it meant that there might be room for discussion. He was wary of Yi Xian, but from his point of view, Yi Xian's sword could enter the seventh spacetime, but that didn't mean that Yi Xian himself could enter the seventh spacetime. It was just like his spacetime seal. The spacetime seal could enter the sixth spacetime, but he couldn't enter the sixth spacetime. A godly item that could enter the seventh spacetime must be obtained. After Yi Xian and the others left, Mu Tian looked at Black Robe and said in a deep voice, "Elder Jean, is it possible that Yi Xian is from a level 6 civilization?" Black Robe shook his head. "Absolutely impossible." Mu Tian was a little puzzled. "Why?" Black Robe said softly, "Because even the Tian clan had never come into contact with a level 6 civilization. Moreover, entering the 7th spacetime doesn't mean that you can be considered a level 6 civilization. Not to mention becoming a level 6 civilization, even becoming a level 5 civilization isn't that simple. The complexity and difficulty of this requires a race to struggle for at least tens of millions of years." Mu Tian's face darkened. Black Robe said again, "Keep an eye on this person for me. I need to make some preparations." After saying that, he turned around and left. Mu Tian looked into the distance and a hint of worry flashed in his eyes. Obviously, this Elder Qi was determined to get the sword in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian followed the spiritual king back to the otherworldly spirit tribe. After returning, Yi Xian immediately said, "Senior, do you know who that Black Robe is?" The spiritual king shook his head. "I don't know. However, I can be sure that he is definitely not from Heaven's sanctum." Yi Xian said, "Can you help me investigate?" The spiritual king nodded. "Of course. When I returned, I had already sent people to investigate him thoroughly. But at this point," he said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid it will be difficult to find anything." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian smiled and said, "Senior, I need to go into seclusion for a period of time." The spiritual king nodded. "All right." After saying that, he hesitated for a moment before saying, "Thank you for your help today, little friend. Otherwise, our celestial coffin and celestial crystal mine would have belonged to Heaven's sanctum." Yi Xian said with a smile, "It's nothing." The spiritual king said with a smile, "No matter what, thank you." Yi Xian nodded and did not say anything else. He entered the hall and returned to Xiaota. After entering Xiaota, Yi Xian's face darkened. That Black Robe was obviously targeting him. So the question was, who was the other party? To be able to possess such a spatial spirit seal, it was definitely not an ordinary person. It was very likely that he was from a level 5 civilization. A level 5 civilization. Yi Xian frowned deeply. Was he being targeted by a level 5 civilization again? Yi Xian lowered his head to look at the azure profound sword in his hand and shook his head with a smile. He thought that after coming to Tianling Cosmos he could live a few days of peace, but he did not expect that a mysterious enemy would appear. What a headache. At that moment Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, don't worry. We don't care about life and death. If we're not happy we'll fight. When have we ever been afraid of anyone?" Yi Xian's face darkened. "Xiao Ta, I realize that you've been a little arrogant recently," Xiao Ta said with a serious expression. "Young master, I've been modified by Sister Tianming. In the entire universe apart from the 3 swords, who can do anything to me, Xiao Ta?" Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta said again, "In any case, I'm not worried about anything." Yi Xian was speechless. Ever since Xiao Ta had been modified by Qing'er, he was no longer an ordinary arrogant person. Apart from the 3 swords he no longer cared about anyone. No, apart from Qing'er, this guy even looked down on his father and big brother. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and began to cultivate. He had to start breaking through to level 10 now. Somewhere in an unknown star field. The illusion race. The illusion race's clan leader stood on the city wall and looked at the starry sky. At that moment he had risen from level 16 to level 17. Level 17 was also known as the Absolute Despair Realm. This was the limit that a level 6 civilization could reach. The reason why he could break through was because of the woman in the plain dress's guidance. The woman in the plain dress. Thinking of this, the illusion race's clan leader's expression gradually became serious. Even now, every time he thought of the woman in the plain dress, he could not help but feel fear. Just how strong was that woman? He did not know. He had no way of estimating her strength. At that moment, the space in front of the illusion race's clan leader was suddenly torn open. The next moment, an illusion race powerhouse appeared in front of the clan leader. The powerhouse said excitedly, "Clan leader, we found young Master Yi." Hearing this, the illusion race's clan leader's pupils suddenly shrank. Chapter 1878. The illusion tribe leader stared at the illusion tribe expert in front of him. "Where is young Master Yi now?" The illusion tribe expert said in a deep voice. "He is in Sky Spirit Universe." The illusion tribe leader frowned. "Sky Spirit Universe?" The illusion tribe expert nodded. "A level 4 civilization universe." The illusion tribe leader was confused. "Why is young Master Yi in such a low-level civilization universe?" The illusion tribe expert shook his head. "I don't know." The illusion tribe leader was silent for a moment before saying, "Pass down my order. All the experts in my tribe who have reached level 14 are to head to Sky Spirit Universe to receive young Master Yi." Hearing this, the illusion tribe expert was confused. "This?" The illusion tribe leader looked at the illusion tribe expert in front of him. "Is there a problem?" The illusion tribe expert hesitated for a moment before saying, "All of them?" The illusion tribe leader nodded. "Not only that, I will go personally." "This?" The illusion tribe expert was shocked. "Tribe leader." The illusion tribe leader slowly closed his eyes. "My tribe will welcome young Master Yi with the highest standards." The illusion tribe expert was speechless. Inside Xiao Ta. During this period of time, Yi Xian was able to overlap the 1st to 4th spacetime and form spacetime pressure. It could be said that the current him was already a level 10 expert. Especially with his sword skills and the profound green sword, he was almost invincible among those of the same level. However, he discovered a fatal problem. Ever since he came into contact with the celestial tribe, his cultivation had been inseparable from the spacetime Tao. Even the current otherworldly demonic tribe focused on studying the spacetime Tao. Of course, this was not a problem. However, he did not forget that he, Yi Xian, was a swordsman. Back then, his big brother's words had shocked him because his big brother did not understand the spacetime Tao at all. His big brother only understood the sword. However, his big brother's sword could break through all spacetime. Swordsman. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and fell into silence. During this period of time, he had not cultivated the sword and had been cultivating the Tao of spacetime. His Tao of spacetime had indeed become much stronger. Now, not only was he invincible under the 10th phase, but even 11th phase experts might not be his match. However, his sword Tao attainment had not improved at all. Sword. Yi Xian looked at the green profound sword in his hand and sighed in his heart. He had neglected the sword Tao during this period of time. He also wanted to improve his sword Tao, but his sword Tao had reached a bottleneck. It was very difficult for him to ascend again. Among the human swordsmen, Other than the three of them, he could be said to be the most powerful. Now he could only rely on himself to explore the way of the sword. Seeming to have thought of something, Yi Xian frowned. I've broken through a lot recently, but why hasn't there been any movement in the sword Dao imprints of my father and big brother? At the thought of this, Yi Xian sensed the two sword Dao marks, but there was no movement at all. Yi Xian's face darkened. This sword Dao imprint couldn't have been tampered with by his father, right? At that moment, the otherworldly spirit king's voice sounded from outside the hall. Young friend Yi Xian. Yi Xian recollected his thoughts and left Xiaota. When he opened the door, the otherworldly spirit king said in a deep voice, Young friend, I have bad news. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What is it? The otherworldly spirit king nodded. That black-robed man is from a level 5 civilization. Yi Xian chuckled. Just as I guessed. The otherworldly spirit king said again, he is determined to obtain your sword. He might make a move soon. Yi Xian said softly, I never thought that I would be targeted by someone from a level 5 civilization the moment I arrived. I really admire myself. The otherworldly spirit king said in a deep voice, his target is your sword. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, a terrifying pressure suddenly swept over from the sky. Boom. In an instant, the entire sky became illusory. The otherworldly spirit king's expression changed drastically. He's here. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the sky. The sky suddenly split open, and a mysterious expert wearing a black robe slowly walked out. Seeing the black robe, the otherworldly spirit king's face immediately darkened. The other party was not giving the otherworldly demonic tribe any face. The black robe looked down at Yi Xian and said in a hoarse voice, Young Master Yi, have you made up your mind? Yi Xian smiled. How much are you willing to pay for my sword? The black robe said, Young Master Ye's life. Yi Xian's lips curled up slightly. In other words, if I don't sell it, I will lose my life. Am I right? The black robe said, Yes. At this moment, the otherworldly spirit king suddenly said, Sir, you are being too overbearing. The black robe looked at the otherworldly spirit king. Does the otherworldly demonic tribe intend to interfere? The otherworldly spirit king looked straight at the black robe. So what if I interfere? The black robe nodded. He waved his right hand lightly, and in an instant, more than 30 illusory figures appeared around him. Seeing the 30 illusory figures, the otherworldly spirit king's face immediately turned grim. Even the weakest of these illusory figures was at 12 Dan. Among them there were even 5 who were at 13 Dan. Including the black robe, there were a total of 6 13 Dan experts. 3 13 Dan experts. One must know that the otherworldly demonic tribe only had 2 13 Dan experts, and there were slightly more 12 Dan experts, but that was still a total of 9. In terms of strength, the otherworldly demonic tribe was already superior to the otherworldly demonic tribe. The otherworldly spirit king's complexion turned awful. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly smiled. This is a matter between you and me. It has nothing to do with the otherworldly demonic tribe. Let's talk elsewhere. There was no reason for him to drag the otherworldly demonic tribe down with him. After all, the otherworldly demonic tribe didn't owe him anything. On the contrary, they had already helped him enough. If he were to drag the otherworldly demonic tribe down with him now, it would be a little dishonorable. In the sky, the black robe nodded. Sure. The otherworldly spirit king opened his mouth to speak but hesitated. Yi Xian smiled and said, Elder, this matter has nothing to do with you. I am grateful to the otherworldly demonic tribe for your hospitality and help over the past few days. The otherworldly spirit king sighed deeply. Young friend, I am very sorry. He wanted to help Yi Xian, but the price he had to pay was simply too great. He was the head of the otherworldly demonic tribe, and he couldn't allow his emotions to affect his decisions. One must know that if he were to forcefully help Yi Xian, it would mean the deaths of countless tribesmen. Furthermore, there was no guarantee that he would be able to help them. One must know that the black robe before him was from a Tier 5 civilization. That was not an existence that the otherworldly demonic tribe could deal with at the moment. Yi Xian smiled. Elder, we will meet again. After saying those words, he vanished from the spot. When he reappeared, he was already in a vast starry sky, and the black robe and the others were already standing before him. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the verdant profound sword appeared in his hand. Looking at the black robe, he smiled and said, Do you want to fight me one-on-one or gang up on me? The black robe replied, Gang up on me. As soon as he said those words, the experts behind him charged toward Yi Xian. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn it, this isn't playing by the rules. A wisp of a savage smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth as he gazed at the few tens of people that charged towards him. In an instant, his entire body was covered in blood, and in the next moment he suddenly slashed forward with the azure sword in his hand. A blood-red sword ray tore through the sky. The leader of the group, a 13th phase expert, punched the sword ray. Rumble. The sword ray shattered. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly appeared before him, and he slashed down with his sword. Sword drawing technique. 2,800 stacked sword drawing techniques. This was his current limit, his true limit, because he had even used the power of his bloodline. As this sword slashed down, the fourth layer of spacetime was directly shattered. Rumble. The 13th phase expert was forced back several thousand zhang. However, at this moment, a powerful force swept over and instantly engulfed Yi Xian. Bang! The sword ray shattered while Yi Xian retreated explosively for 30 kilometers. As soon as he stopped moving, an enormous palm that was 300 m long suddenly descended from the sky, and the powerful pressure it emanated crushed and obliterated the space he resided in. Yi Xian stomped his right foot on the ground and drew his sword. A ray of sword light slashed directly onto the enormous palm, causing it to tremble violently while a destructive force erupted from it. Yi Xian blocked it with his sword and activated his sword domain. Bang! The powerful force was completely blocked by his sword domain. Meanwhile, the space he resided in suddenly became illusory. Yi Xian swiftly turned around. A mysterious expert was silently chanting an incantation nearby, and then Yi Xian gradually started to descend. In the eyes of others he was still standing on the spot, but he was actually falling madly. A spatial abyss. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly became illusory, and he returned to reality in the next moment. Black Robe's face sank when he saw this. This spatial abyss is useless against Yi Xian? The experts nearby were just about to attack again when Black Robe raised his right hand, and they immediately retreated to the side. Black Robe opened his right palm and pressed it down lightly. In an instant, countless strands of terrifying spatial pressure suddenly surged out from all around Yi Xian. The fifth layer of spacetime, the 10,000-dimensional spatial pressure. Yi Xian's face was expressionless as he allowed the spatial pressure to drown him. However, he was completely unharmed. Black Robe's eyes narrowed. How could this be possible? As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the spacetime spiritual seal showed up in his hand. The next second, the space over Yi Xian's head suddenly split open. Then a spacetime pressure that was dozens of times stronger than before swept down. As the spacetime pressure appeared, the space around him disappeared bit by bit. The sixth layer of spacetime pressure. Yi Xian still didn't dodge, and he allowed the spatial pressure to crush down on him. Boom. The area where Yi Xian was directly annihilated, but he was completely unharmed. Seeing this, Black Robe's pupils suddenly shrank. How is this possible? In the distance, Yi Xian's lips curled into a ferocious smile. I'm immune to any spatial pressure. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared on the spot. A ray of sword light instantly slashed in front of Black Robe, who blocked it with his arm. Boom. The ray of sword light shattered, and at this moment, a ray of sword light suddenly engulfed him. Core sword domain. Boom. As the ray of sword light shattered, Black Robe retreated rapidly. As he retreated, a blood-red flying sword suddenly slashed at him. Black Robe once again blocked it with his arm. Bust. Black Robe's right arm was sent flying, and at the same time the green profound sword slashed at Black Robe's chest. Bang! Black Robe retreated tens of thousands of feet away and his body shattered. Seeing this, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. He suddenly realized that when the spatial abyss and spatial pressure were ineffective against him, these so-called Phase 13 experts in front of him weren't that strong. What was the difference between a 10th stage and a 13th stage? In terms of spacetime attainments, a 13th phase expert could directly use the 5th layer of spacetime to kill a 10th phase expert. The spacetime pressure of the 5th layer of spacetime was definitely not something a 10th phase expert could withstand. But Yi Xian was an exception. He was immune to spacetime pressure. From another perspective, if one wanted to kill Yi Xian, they could not use spacetime pressure. They could only use pure strength. Black Robe looked at Yi Xian. Why is spacetime pressure ineffective against you? A wisp of a savage smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth. Because I have a younger sister, understand? The black-robed elder. P.S. Asking for votes. Chapter 1879. Sister? Black Robe was stunned. What the hell? Yi Xian didn't waste his breath. He transformed into a blood-red ray of light and vanished on the spot. Black Robe's pupils constricted. He who only had his soul left, couldn't resist Yi Xian at all. He hurriedly said, "Attack together." Black Robe's pupils constricted. The mysterious experts behind him charged at Yi Xian. Rumble. In an instant, the entire star region started to collapse bit by bit. When their spacetime pressure was ineffective against Yi Xian, the mysterious experts had a headache. This human sword was too terrifying. They didn't dare to go head-on against the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. It wasn't just the sword, the human sword technique was terrifying as well. Most importantly, even if they escaped into the fifth layer of spacetime, the human could still follow them in. Although the human couldn't use the spacetime pressure of the fifth layer, he could still enter it. When they saw Yi Xian enter the fifth layer of spacetime, they were stunned. What's going on? A rank 10 expert can actually enter the fifth layer of spacetime? Most importantly, the spacetime energy of the fifth layer of spacetime was useless against this human. In the fifth layer of spacetime, Yi Xian suddenly slashed down with his sword. A blood-red ray of light instantly slashed down, and everywhere it passed, the spacetime energy of the fifth layer of spacetime dodged. In the distance, the mysterious expert's expressions were unsightly to the extreme. Meanwhile, a rank 13 expert suddenly took a step forward. He slowly clenched his right hand, and in an instant, a powerful force condensed in his fist. In the next moment, he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Rumble. The blood-red ray of light shattered, and the rank 13 expert retreated repeatedly. Meanwhile, a flying sword suddenly slashed down. The rank 13 expert's pupils constricted. He opened his palm, and a round shield suddenly appeared in front of him. Rumble. The round shield shattered. At the same time, he retreated explosively, and he retreated directly into the endless spacetime abyss. After entering the spacetime abyss, the expert's expression changed drastically. They weren't like Yi Xian who could ignore the spacetime abyss. There was an extremely terrifying spacetime gravity in the spacetime abyss, and this was what experts like them feared the most. The stronger the spacetime, the more terrifying the spacetime abyss. After entering the spacetime abyss, the expert fell at a terrifying speed. In the process of falling, his physical body began to be destroyed bit by bit. The expressions of the nearby mysterious experts changed when they witnessed this scene, and they retreated in unison. No one dared to save him. There was no way to save him. If they wanted to save him, they had to enter the spacetime abyss. But how could they dare to enter the spacetime abyss? Just like that, the expert who fell into the spacetime abyss was annihilated bit by bit in despair. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "So all of you are so afraid of the spacetime abyss." When they heard Yi Xian's words, the expressions of the remaining 4 rank 13 powerhouses changed greatly, and they didn't hesitate to leave the fifth layer of space. Originally, this place was their advantage, but at this moment, they discovered that this place had become Yi Xian's advantage. Not only could Yi Xian ignore the spacetime pressure, but he could also ignore the spacetime abyss. How could they fight against him? In the distance, Black Robe stared fixedly at Yi Xian. At this moment, he was shocked to the extreme. He hadn't imagined that not only could Yi Xian enter the fifth layer of space, he was even immune to the spacetime pressure. Without the spacetime pressure, he noticed that they didn't have any advantage when facing Yi Xian. When he thought up to here, Black Robe had the intention to retreat. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot, and Black Robe's pupils constricted. Stop him. As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 rank 13 powerhouses by his side charged at Yi Xian, whereas Black Robe himself turned around and vanished at the end of the starry sky, and the rank 12 powerhouses retreated successively. Presently they weren't a threat to Yi Xian at all. In the distance, Yi Xian was fighting 3 rank 13 powerhouses by himself. Rumble. Yi Xian was suddenly blasted back by a punch from one of the powerhouses, and he just stopped when an afterimage instantly flashed over. At the same time, an extremely terrifying force shot straight towards his face. Yi Xian stomped his right foot on the ground, and in an instant, a wave of sword light enveloped him. Core Sword Domain. Rumble. The wave of sword light shattered as soon as it appeared, but the rank 13 powerhouse was blasted back over 10 kilometers. Meanwhile, the space above Yi Xian suddenly split open, and a fist descended straight down. Yi Xian's body suddenly became illusory. In the next moment he'd entered the fifth layer of space, and the fist had vanished without a trace. The expressions of the 3 rank 13 powerhouses instantly became unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Once Yi Xian entered the fifth layer of space, they wouldn't be able to do anything, because they didn't dare to enter the fifth layer of space at all. If they did, then they might be sent into the spacetime abyss by Yi Xian, and once they were sent into the spacetime abyss, then they would definitely die. Most importantly, Yi Xian wasn't afraid of the space-time abyss. The three powerhouses glanced at each other, but they didn't attack again. Instead, they turned around and vanished into the distance. It was meaningless to continue fighting because they couldn't do anything to Yi Xian. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the end of the starry sky. After a while, he turned around and left, and it didn't take long for him to arrive at Heaven's Sanctum. Heaven's Sanctum was located in the heavenly world. As one of the three great powers in the heavenly spirit cosmos, Heaven's Sanctum's strength was naturally unquestionable. As soon as Yi Xian arrived in Heaven's Sanctum, the master of Heaven's Sanctum, Mu Tian, appeared in front of him. Mu Tian's expression instantly became unsightly when he saw that Yi Xian was still alive. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Let me ask you a question. Who is that black-robed man?" Mu Tian fell silent. Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword. Boom. A sword howl resounded abruptly. In the distance, Mu Tian's expression changed drastically, and then he swiftly took a step forward and smashed his fist forward. At the instant this fist smashed forward, a strand of extremely terrifying spatial pressure instantly drowned Yi Xian's sword. Rumble. The entire horizon suddenly boiled, and in the next moment, Yi Xian's profound azure sword suddenly appeared in front of Mu Tian. Mu Tian's pupils shrank. My spacetime pressure is actually useless against this sword? He didn't have time to think and blocked with his arms. Boom. Mu Tian's arms instantly broke and he instantly retreated 1,000 feet away. But before he could stop, a flying sword suddenly slashed at him. Mu Tian's pupils shrank. He stomped his right foot and his entire body directly entered the fifth layer of spacetime. However, in the next moment, the profound azure sword actually followed him into the fifth layer of spacetime. Mu Tian was shocked in his heart. With a thought, a golden runic shield appeared in front of him. Boom. The golden runic shield was directly smashed by the profound azure sword. But at this moment, Mu Tian had already retreated to the other side. Mu Tian's expression changed drastically when he saw that Yi Xian still wanted to attack, and he hurriedly said, "The Spirit Beast Clan." "He's from the Spirit Beast Clan." Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. "The Spirit Beast Clan that left this cosmos and became a level 5 civilization?" Mu Tian took a deep look at Yi Xian. "That's right." Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. "Why would they target me? Moreover, if I'm not wrong, they've been targeting me the moment I arrived in this cosmos. Am I right?" Mu Tian fell silent. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Next I'll ask you a question and you'll answer it. If you're slow, I'll slaughter your heaven's palace." Mu Tian's expression instantly changed, and he stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said again, "Answer my question just now." Mu Tian's expression was slightly unsightly. When had the heaven's palace ever been threatened like this? At this moment Yi Xian suddenly opened his right hand, and the profound azure sword flew directly into the heaven's palace. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 bloody heads flew into the sky. Mu Tian immediately said, "I wanted to deal with the otherworldly demonic tribe, so I asked for their help. However, I didn't expect them to discover the sword in your hand." Yi Xian said, "That means that they're not targeting me on purpose." Mu Tian solemnly said, "Yes." Yi Xian fell silent. "Damn it, so they're scheming after seeing my wealth." Yi Xian asked again, "Where is the Spirit Beast Clan?" Mu Tian shook his head, "I don't know." Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Mu Tian continued, "I really don't know. I can only contact them through voice transmission talismans. As for where they are, I don't know." Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment Mu Tian solemnly said, "Sir, our heaven's palace has no ill intentions towards you. Our initial target was the otherworldly demonic tribe, and our heaven's palace has no intention of interfering in the matter between you and the Spirit Beast Clan. I hope that you can be magnanimous." Yi Xian pondered for a moment before he said, "I have a good temper and I'm an honest person. To me anything can be negotiated. However, do you understand what I mean?" Mu Tian was stunned for a moment before he said, "You?" At this point he seemed to have thought of something and his face darkened. "Damn it, you're asking for benefits." Mu Tian glanced at Yi Xian before he opened his palm, and a spatial ring appeared in his hand. "There are 5 celestial crystal mines in this spatial ring. Please accept them." Yi Xian opened his palm and the spatial ring flew into his hand. He put it away and turned to leave. Mu Tian's gaze gradually turned dark after Yi Xian left. "Human, this enmity." Right at this moment Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Mu Tian. Mu Tian's expression changed drastically. "You?" Yi Xian grinned. "I like to annihilate everything I do." As soon as he finished speaking, the azure profound sword in his hand suddenly vanished, and a ray of light flashed. Mu Tian was horrified. At this moment of life and death, he utilized his strongest ability once more, the fifth layer of space. In an instant, boundless spatial pressure obstructed his path. However, it was like the pressure didn't exist before the azure profound sword. The azure profound sword pierced the center of Mu Tian's forehead. Bang! Mu Tian's soul was directly absorbed. Yi Xian gazed at the innate talent below with a calm expression. In the next moment he charged down. Since they were enemies, then he had to annihilate them. He didn't want to see his enemies take revenge if he didn't annihilate them all. Mei Li glanced at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. I'm interested in this sword. Yi Xian flew into a rage. I'm not as good as a sword? Mei Li blinked. Without this sword, would you be Mu Tian's opponent? Yi Xian was silent. Without the green profound sword he might not be able to beat Mu Tian. Because the reason he could beat Mu Tian was because of the green profound sword's ability to ignore space and time. Mei Li still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, May I ask what phase Mu Tian is? And what phase am I? Mei Li was silent. Yi Xian then said, Miss, if you're interested in my sword, then you need to be clear about one thing. That is, I'm not interested in you, do you understand? Mei Li looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, Are you interested in me? Yi Xian shook his head. I, Yi Xian, am not interested in women. Mei Li narrowed her eyes. Human, you should learn to respect me. Yi Xian smiled and said, You were the one who didn't respect me first. Saying this he turned around and left. Mei Li suddenly said, Spirit beast race. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, Do you think I'm afraid of the spirit beast race? Mei Li looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. She didn't choose to directly attack for two reasons. The first was because of the sword in Yi Xian's hand and the second was because of Yi Xian's identity. Yi Xian then said, Miss, let's make a deal. Are you interested? Mei Li smiled and asked, What deal? Yi Xian said, Pardon me for asking, but what is Mrs. current strength? Mei Li's lips curled up. Killing a 14th phase expert shouldn't be a problem. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, How big is the gap between me and a 14th phase expert? Mei Li said, If you don't use the sword in your hand, a 13th phase expert can easily kill you. If you use that sword. I can't say. Yi Xian looked at Mei Li. Try it? Mei Li nodded. All right. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly disappeared on the spot. Yi Xian's pupils shrank. He was just about to use his invincible sword domain. Bang. As a muffled sound rang out, Yi Xian retreated hundreds of thousands of feet away. As soon as he stopped, two fingers touched his forehead. Mei Li looked at Yi Xian. After a moment, she withdrew her fingers and smiled. This gap seems a bit big. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Why are you so fast? Mei Li said, Space-time folding. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Space-time folding? Mei Li nodded. At our level, we can use space-time folding. As she spoke, she retreated thousands of meters away and waved her right hand. In an instant, the space where she and Yi Xian were directly folded. At the same time, she appeared in front of Yi Xian. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression became serious. Mei Li said, Space-time folding. From a certain perspective, this is currently the fastest known speed. Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, he was thinking that if his flying sword could be transported in this way. Mei Li smiled. You seem to be interested. Yi Xian looked at Mei Li. Let's make a deal. Are you interested? Mei Li nodded. Tell me about it. Yi Xian said, I can let you study my sword. In exchange you have to follow me for 3 months. During this period you have to protect me. Not only that, you have to teach me. Mei Li smiled. Why? Yi Xian asked, How many layers of space-time can your body enter? Mei Li said, The 6th layer. Yi Xian opened his palm and the green profound sword entered the 7th layer of space-time. Seeing this scene, the smile on Mei Li's face gradually disappeared. After a moment, she looked at Yi Xian. The limit of your sword is the 7th layer of space-time? Yi Xian smiled. Take a guess? Mei Li took a deep look at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. The deal you mentioned is a deal. With that, she opened her palm and asked for the sword. However, Yi Xian kept the green profound sword. Teach me how to fold space-time first. Mei Li looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled. Is there a problem? Mei Li smiled. No problem. Yi Xian nodded. How should I address you, miss? Mei Li said, Mei Li. Yi Xian said, Miss Mei Li, let's enter Xiao Ta and slowly study it. With that, he directly brought Mei Li into Xiaota. After entering Xiaota, Mei Li's face suddenly became solemn. The space-time in your tower. With that, she looked at Yi Xian. 10 years in this world is 1 day outside. Yi Xian looked at Mei Li and was slightly shocked. This woman actually saw through it at a glance. Mei Li looked deeply at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, you are not simple. You know, this world is independent of the space-time outside. Not only that, the other party also carried out a wonderful reversal of the space-time in this tower. This is not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing is that the other party made this world have a certain connection with the outside world. With that, she was silent for a long time, then said, the space-time path contained within it has already exceeded my understanding. I can't explain it completely. Yi Xian smiled, it's just a small matter. Don't make a fuss about it. Mei Li frowned slightly, a small matter? Young Master Yi, do you know what this means? Even the illusion race, which has reached a level 6 civilization, can't do this. Illusion race. Yi Xian blinked. You know about the illusion race? Mei Li looked at Yi Xian. You know about the illusion race too? Yi Xian said with a straight face, of course. Mei Li stared at Yi Xian. I wonder what is the relationship between young Master Yi and the illusion race. Yi Xian blinked then said, this? Do you really want to know? Mei Li nodded, I'm curious. Yi Xian smiled. To be honest, the illusion race is a subsidiary race of my Yang family. If you want to be arrogant, you should brag as much as you can. You don't have to pay taxes anyway. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Mei Li's mouth twitched. Young Master Yi, are you sure? Yi Xian nodded, very sure. Mei Li was silent. Do you know how terrifying the illusion race is? Yi Xian smiled. Is it very terrifying? Mei Li smiled. As far as I know, within the illusion race, they have 136 subsidiary races, and the lowest among them is a level 5 civilization. Not only that, but the illusion race also controls 19 super-universes. The scope of their influence is unimaginable. They are also known as the number 1 race in the universe. Young Master Yi, you said that they are a subsidiary race of your Yang family? Yi Xian was a little embarrassed. Damn, wasn't this bragging a little too much? However, it was hard to back down now, so he could only continue bragging. Yi Xian laughed. Miss Mei Li, do you know how powerful my Yang family is? Mei Li looked at Yi Xian. Yang family? Forgive me for being blunt, but I've never heard of it. Yi Xian's face darkened. This dad was too low-key. Mei Li smiled and said, Young Master Yi, can you tell me more about this Yang clan? Yi Xian smiled and said, I am the Yang clan's patriarch. Oh no, my father is the patriarch. I am the Yang clan's young patriarch. Do you know my father? A man who likes to wear green robes. Mei Li shook her head. Never heard of it. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Miss Mei Li's level is too low. Mei Li, Yi Xian continued, in any case, as long as I don't die, my Yang clan will be invincible. Oh, that's not right. As long as my father doesn't die, my Yang clan will be invincible. If you don't agree, feel free to find my father. The azure-robed man, Xiaota, suddenly said, Young Master, you're really awesome. You can brag all you want, but if there's a problem, I'll take responsibility. P.S. Let me ask everyone a question. How many chapters do you think an author needs for the readers to be willing to vote for them? Chapter 1881. Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian and did not speak. She naturally did not believe Yi Xian's words. This human did not look like an honest person. However, she did not say anything else. Yi Xian did not say anything else and began to ask Mei Li about spacetime. Spacetime folding. If he could fold spacetime coupled with his azure sword, who could stop him? In the following period of time, Yi Xian learned how to fold spacetime from Mei Li every day. It was not difficult to fold spacetime. When he folded the first spacetime, he did it very easily. However, when he folded the second spacetime, it was a little difficult. However, he still managed to do it in 3 days. When he folded the third spacetime, the difficulty increased by at least 10 times. In Mei Li's words, spacetime had density. The higher it was, the thicker the spacetime was. The thicker the spacetime was, the harder it was to fold. What was spacetime density? In order to figure this out, Yi Xian spent nearly a month. Everything had density. Spacetime density was just one of them. Not long after, Yi Xian was able to fold the third spacetime. After that, he began to familiarize himself with the fourth spacetime. While Yi Xian was practicing the fourth spacetime, Mei Li was studying his azure sword. Looking at the azure sword in her hand, Mei Li fell into deep thought. The profoundness of this sword had completely exceeded her understanding, especially the spacetime path. It was so profound that even Xiaota could not compare to it. Who was the one who created this? At this moment she no longer had any desire for revenge. Even if the person behind this human was not strong enough to make the illusion clan submit, he was not someone that Heaven's sanctum could provoke. Her current goal was to slowly study the Azure Sword. It would be best if she could fully understand it. She believed that if she could fully understand it she would be able to reach another level. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly walked in front of Mei Li. "Miss Mei Li, I can already fold the fourth space-time. But this fifth space-time." Mei Li put down the Azure Sword and smiled. "It's difficult, right?" Yi Xian nodded. "I realize that it's impossible to fold." Mei Li looked at Yi Xian. "Do you know why the fifth space-time is so difficult?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't know." Mei Li said, "The fifth layer of time and space supports the 10,000-dimensional time and space. It is made up of countless layers of time and space. Its density is about 100 times that of the fourth layer of time and space. Do you think it's easy for you to fold space-time with such density?" Yi Xian quickly asked, "Is there any other way?" After pondering for a moment, Mei Li said, "There are two methods. The first is to take it slow. After cultivating for 1,000 years, you should be able to do it." 1,000 years? Yi Xian's expression froze. In other words, it would take a few months. On second thought, it didn't seem to be too long. After all, he was in Xiaota's world. Mei Li continued, "There's another way, and that's to fuse with the fifth layer of space-time." Yi Xian was stunned and said, "Fuse with the fifth layer of space-time?" Mei Li nodded. "This is more difficult, but there are many benefits. If you can fuse with the fifth layer of space-time, not only can you fold space-time, but you can also reverse space-time and distort space-time." Yi Xian blinked. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Mei Li frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm and the Azure Sword appeared in his hand. The next moment he directly escaped into the fifth layer of space-time. At this moment he had fused with the fifth layer of space-time. Seeing this scene, Mei Li's expression instantly became solemn. "You," as she spoke, she seemed to have thought of something and looked at the Azure Sword in Yi Xian's hand. "It's your sword?" Yi Xian smiled. "Yes." Mei Li stared at Yi Xian. "This sword can actually allow you to fuse with space-time." Yi Xian nodded and seemed to have thought of something. He asked, "Miss Mei Li, under normal circumstances how long does it take to fuse with the fifth layer of space-time?" Mei Li said in a low voice, "At least 100,000 years." Yi Xian was stunned. 100,000 years? Are you serious? Mei Li was a little annoyed. "Do you think it's easy to fuse with space-time?" Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. "I think it's quite easy." Mei Li said angrily, "That's because you have this sword. If you were to cultivate normally, it would be absolutely impossible without tens of thousands of years." Yi Xian looked at the Azure Sword in his hand and smiled. "Actually, I also want to cultivate normally, but my strength doesn't allow it." Mei Li suddenly closed her eyes and placed her right hand on her chest. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Mei Li, what's wrong?" Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian. "Chest pain." Yi Xian subconsciously said, "Do you want me to help you rub it?" After saying that, he regretted it. Damn it. What was he thinking? Mei Li smiled faintly. "Help me rub it?" Yi Xian laughed. "Miss Mei Li, I'm just joking. I, Yi Xian, have never been interested in women. Let's get down to business. Miss Mei Li, now that I have fused with the fifth layer of space-time, what should I do next?" Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian and said lightly, "It's very simple. Feel them and truly understand their nature. Since you can fuse with them, it's not difficult to do so." Yi Xian nodded and tried. Soon a smile appeared on his face. Just like what Mei Li said, it was really not difficult. Of course, the premise was that he could fuse with the fifth layer of space-time. Before long, Yi Xian started trying to fold the fifth layer of space-time. Mei Li took a deep look at Yi Xian, and she was extremely shocked. She realized that she had underestimated the green profound sword. Yi Xian actually relied on this sword to fuse with the fifth layer of space-time. Exactly how terrifying is this sword? There was no answer. Because the knowledge of space-time contained in this sword had exceeded her current understanding. Before long, Yi Xian was able to fold the fifth layer of space-time, but he didn't continue to fold the sixth layer of space-time. He had to first fuse the Tao of space-time folding with the flying sword. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword silently appeared 3 kilometers away. A smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth when he saw this. It's feasible. This space-time folding can really be fused with the flying sword. Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian, and a wisp of seriousness appeared in her eyes. After Yi Xian's flying sword utilized space-time folding, Its speed could only be described as terrifying. It could be said that the sword just now was enough to instantly kill some Phase 13 experts. It was an instant kill. Moreover, Yi Xian's flying sword had another terrifying aspect, and that was the sword. This green profound sword wasn't an ordinary sword, and there was probably nothing in this world that could stop it. After this sword passed, there was no other way other than using space-time folding to escape. No one dared to go head-on against Yi Xian's sword. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly became illusory, and the next moment he had already entered the 6th layer of space-time. Seeing this, Mei Li looked at Yi Xian as if she was looking at a monster, and her voice trembled as she said, You can even enter the 6th layer of space-time? Yi Xian smiled and said, That's right. Why, is it very difficult to enter the 6th layer of space-time? Mei Li said angrily, Are you talking like a human? Do you know how long it took me to enter the 6th layer of space-time? A whole 160,000 years. 160,000 years. Do you know how I spent those 160,000 years? Yi Xian frowned slightly. 160,000 years? Isn't that too exaggerated? Mei Li was so angry that her eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. Try not using this sword. Big brother, I beg you, don't try using this sword. Yi Xian said seriously, This sword was made for me by my sister. You can also get your sister to make one for you. Mei Li slowly closed her eyes and she clenched her fists, and her chest heaved up and down. She couldn't help but want to hit someone. Yi Xian laughed, Miss Mei Li, don't be angry, I have no ill intentions. I know that cultivation is not easy, and using this sword to enter the 6th layer of space-time is equivalent to taking a shortcut. I am not complacent because of this, because I know that it is this sword that brought me this, if not for this sword. Speaking up to this point, he thought for a moment and then said, If not for this sword, I think I can get Qing to make another one for me. The problem is that Yi is not very big. Chapter 1882. Invincible? I will? Mei Li had a strange expression on her face. Has this human gone mad? In the boundless universe, who would dare to call themselves invincible? Invincible? Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from the side. Yi Xian turned around and looked over. The space nearby had suddenly become illusory, and it wasn't long before a man walked out. The man had a robust figure and his face was covered in scales. At first glance he seemed extremely ferocious. A 14th rank expert. The man smiled and said, Human say you. The sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly vanished. In the next moment the man's pupils constricted, and he was just about to flee. However, he was still a bit too slow and the sword pierced through his forehead. A fountain of blood sprayed out. The man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. At this moment, his soul had been locked onto by Yi Xian's sword. The man gazed at Yi Xian. You? Spatial folding. You're only at the 10th rank, how could you? Right at this moment, Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and the azure profound sword directly absorbed the man's soul. The expressions of the spirit beast experts instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. This human instantly killed a 14th rank expert? Mei Li's expression was slightly serious as well. The growth of Yi Xian's strength was slightly terrifying. How long had it been? Oh. Mei Li suddenly recalled that even though only a few days had passed in the outside world, it had been a few dozen years in Xiao Ta's body. However, even then the speed at which Yi Xian improved was too terrifying. Sword. Mei Li's gaze descended onto the azure profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. This sword had directly increased Yi Xian's strength by over a dozen levels. In the distance, after Yi Xian killed the 14th rank expert, he didn't stop. He opened his palm and in an instant, the heads of all the spirit beast experts flew into the air. Instant kill. With his current flying sword, even a 14th rank expert could not block it, let alone these experts below the 14th rank? After the Qingxian sword absorbed the souls of the spirit beast clan's powerhouses, Yi Xian put away the Qingxian sword. At this moment, the horizon in front of him suddenly split open and a shadow quietly appeared. Yi Xian frowned. Again. The phantom gradually solidified, and it didn't take long for a middle-aged man to appear in front of Yi Xian. The middle-aged man wore a black robe and had a horn growing out of his head. A 15th-stage master. This person was the current patriarch of the spirit beast clan, Shogu. Shogu looked at Yi Xian. We underestimated you. Yi Xian smiled and said, As far as I know, I have no enmity with the spirit beasts. I wonder if you... Shogu suddenly interrupted Yi Xian's words. There was no enmity between us before, but isn't there enmity now? Yi Xian looked at Shogu and said with a smile, What you said makes sense. Shogu stared at Yi Xian. Do you dare to come to my spirit beast clan? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't dare. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left. He didn't make a move because the person in front of him was only a phantom, not the real body. Shogu stared at the distant Yi Xian. His gaze was like a blade, incomparably cold. On the other side, Yi Xian directly returned to Xiao Ta. Take the initiative to go to the Spirit Beast clan? He wasn't an idiot. Now that he had the strength to go to the Spirit Beast clan and fight against the entire Spirit Beast clan, wasn't that just courting death? Wouldn't it be better for him to cultivate in Xiao Ta and then kill his way over? Facing this kind of 15th stage expert, he didn't have any confidence. Not to mention 15th stage, even if it was 14th stage, if the other party was on guard, it would be difficult for him to instantly kill them. When he instantly killed that 14th stage expert, it was actually because he caught the other party off guard. And this Spirit Beast clan clearly had a 15th stage expert. Moreover, it was possible that there was more than one. The most important thing was that this kind of power had an ancestor or something. As they fought, they had to summon their ancestor. What a pain in the ass. This time, he had to make thorough preparations before killing his way over to the Spirit Beast clan. Yi Xian continued to fold the 6th layer of spacetime. If he could fold the 6th layer of spacetime, then he would have the ability to kill a 15th stage expert. During this time, Mei Li was constantly guiding Yi Xian. Therefore the progress was quite smooth. However, the Spirit Beast clan clearly didn't want to give him time. Yi Xian, who was cultivating, suddenly raised his head. He frowned. So fast. At the side, Mei Li smiled and said, You're already enough to attract the attention of the Spirit Beast clan. Right now they don't just want your sword, they want to get rid of you even more. Yi Xian didn't say anything. He left Xiao Ta. As soon as he left Xiao Ta, the Spirit Beast clan's patriarch, Shogu, appeared in front of him. Shogu didn't look at Yi Xian. Instead, he looked at Mei Li, who was by Yi Xian's side. Heaven's abodes, Lord, are you going to help this human? Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian and then she smiled and said, Yes. Shogu smiled. According to what I know, this person seems to want to destroy your heaven's abode. Mei Li smiled lightly. Patriarch Shogu, even though this sword is good, it's a hot potato. You have to think it through. Shogu nodded slightly. So you're here for this sword as well. I understand. Mei Li glanced at Shogu and shook her head. Understand my ass. You don't even know who you're facing. At this moment, Shogu suddenly turned his head. Beast desolate, I'll leave Palace Master Mei Li to you. As soon as he finished speaking, a Beastman expert suddenly walked out from the right. That Beastman expert gazed at Mei Li while a wisp of a smile arose on the corners of his mouth. Please provide me with your guidance. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure leaped up and vanished on the spot. Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian. Take care of yourself. As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished on the spot. In the next moment, both of them entered the 6th layer of space. Meanwhile, Shogu gazed at Yi Xian. Do you have anyone else? Yi Xian shook his head. No. Shogu stared at Yi Xian. That shouldn't be the case. A genius like you doesn't have anyone backing you? I don't believe it. Yi Xian smiled. Cut the crap. Do you want a one-on-one fight or a group fight? Shogu gazed at Yi Xian. One-on-one. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. Spacetime folding. Moreover, it was the 6th layer of spacetime folding. At the instant that Shogu vanished, Yi Xian's expression instantly changed, and he immediately utilized the invincible sword domain. In terms of speed, he was definitely inferior to Shogu, so he could only choose to defend. Bang. As soon as Yi Xian utilized the invincible sword domain, a powerful force swept over, and his face instantly turned pale. Meanwhile, the azure sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly vanished. As the sound of something tearing resounded, Shogu retreated explosively by 300 m. Shogu glanced at his right hand, and there was a deep scar on it. Shogu raised his head to look at Yi Xian. Spacetime folding. You're only at the 10th level, so how can you? Right at this moment, Yi Xian's sword suddenly vanished once more, and Shogu's body suddenly became illusory. The azure sword slashed through the air. In the distance, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly constricted, and he immediately utilized the core sword domain. An expanse of sword light drowned him because Shogu had directly folded spacetime and arrived in front of him. Moreover, he'd even smashed his fist towards Yi Xian. Bang! Countless rays of sword light shattered, and Yi Xian retreated explosively by over 10 kilometers. Meanwhile, Shogu suddenly took a step forward, and the expanse of spacetime where Yi Xian resided was instantly transformed into an abyss. A spacetime abyss. Merely a single move had blasted Yi Xian into a space-time abyss. However, to Shogu's disbelief, Yi Xian, who just entered the space-time abyss, had directly returned to the real world. "He's out?" Shogu was slightly stunned. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Shogu, and he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Draw the sword to decide life and death. Presently, the speed of his flying sword wasn't sufficient to kill Shogu. Since speed couldn't kill Shogu, then he could only choose strength. As Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the expanse of spacetime where Shogu resided was instantly obliterated, and even the fifth layer of spacetime was obliterated. Shogu's face was emotionless as he immediately smashed his fist forward. Head-on. A ray of sword light was obliterated by Shogu's fist. At the same time, Yi Xian instantly retreated explosively by 30 kilometers. His strength had been suppressed. After Yi Xian stopped moving, he wiped off the blood on the corners of his mouth, and then his eyes gradually turned blood red. Bloodline energy. A wisp of disdain arose on the corners of Shogu's mouth. "You actually dared to utilize the strength of your bloodline in front of me. Could it be that you don't know that my Beast Spirit clan's bloodline is ranked at the 5th position in the world?" As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward, and a strand of bloodline pressure swept directly towards Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly clenched his fists tightly, and then a strand of formidable bloodline pressure surged out from within him like tidewater. It was a competition of bloodlines. However, Shogu's bloodline pressure had just come into contact with Yi Xian's bloodline pressure when it was instantly dispersed. Shogu's face was filled with disbelief when he witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly charged over to him, and then he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Boom. A sword howl resounded as a ray of blood-red light slashed down. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Shogu's eyes, and then he suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground and smashed his fist forward. A single punch. Rumble. An expanse of blood-red light was blasted apart, and then Yi Xian's figure was blasted flying. However, Shogu suddenly charged forward and stomped his foot forward. Bang. The space in the surroundings collapsed. Yi Xian hurriedly utilized the sword domain. However, even the sword domain wasn't able to resist the force of Shogu's kick. Rumble. The sword domain was destroyed, and then Yi Xian was instantly blasted 30 kilometers away. He just stopped when the green profound sword in his hand suddenly vanished. Shogu's eyes narrowed slightly as he raised his arm horizontally to block the attack. Bang. The green profound sword was blasted flying. However, Shogu's right arm was directly split apart, and he was pushed 300 m back. After he stopped, Shogu glanced at the green profound sword in front of Yi Xian, and he spoke with slight excitement. "What a good sword!" Yi Xian lightly waved the green profound sword in his hand, and a wisp of blood slowly seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He couldn't defeat him. Facing this kind of 15th phase super expert, he still couldn't beat, especially this kind of 15th phase expert who also had a powerful physical body. At this moment, an old man in a long robe appeared in front of Shogu. The old man glanced at Yi Xian in the distance and said, "Patriarch, this person isn't simple." Behind him, Shogu laughed savagely. "It doesn't matter. No matter how strong the person behind him is, how strong can he be? What is the human race? A piece of trash that can't even be considered a rank 2 civilization. P.S. Every time more people vote and reward, I get a little carried away. Everyone, please don't vote and reward. Let me calm down. My income has plummeted, so I'll work hard." His intuition told him that this human was not normal. If he wasn't careful, the spirit beast would face a great disaster. In this vast universe, although the spirit beast race was a level 5 civilization, there were many other level 5 civilizations. There were even the legendary level 6 civilizations. The stronger they were, the more careful they had to be. The slightest bit of carelessness could consign them to eternal damnation. Shou Yin sighed softly, turned around, and left. On the other side, Yi Xian directly arrived at the 7th layer of spacetime. After he entered the 7th layer of spacetime, it was absolutely impossible for Shogu and the other experts to find him. After all, Shogu was only a level 15 expert. At most, he could only enter the 6th layer of spacetime. The 7th layer of spacetime was completely dark. Strictly speaking, the 7th layer of spacetime was formed by a spacetime black hole. The pressure here was more than 100 times stronger than the pressure in the 6th layer of spacetime. If it wasn't for the profound azure sword, he wouldn't have dared to enter. With his current strength, he was simply no different from an ant here. Not to mention him, even if the desolate antiquity came here, he would probably be wiped out in an instant. It could be said that the sixth layer of spacetime and the seventh layer of spacetime were worlds apart. This made Yi Xian's mood somewhat solemn. He could still face a level 15 expert. However, if he encountered an expert who could enter the seventh layer of spacetime, he definitely wouldn't be able to fight back. After a moment, Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and returned to Xiao Ta's body. Then he entered the sixth layer of spacetime and continued to fold the sixth layer of spacetime. Only by folding the sixth layer of spacetime would he have a chance to kill a level 15 expert. Otherwise, he would be crushed by his opponent in terms of speed. As for the seventh layer of spacetime, he didn't even think about it. It was definitely not something he could touch now. He had to admit that he was in a bit of a hurry. This was because he knew that if his opponent couldn't find him, he would definitely think of other ways. For example, he would look for the spirit of Nine and use them or even the human race to threaten him. He had already figured out these enemies' tricks. Therefore he had to race against time. Otherwise he might fall into a passive position. Outside, somewhere in the starry sky, Shogu sat cross-legged in the starry sky. Behind him stood more than a dozen super experts of the Spirit Beast clan. He kept recalling the battle with Yi Xian in his mind. Finally he came to a conclusion. The reason why Yi Xian was able to fight with him for so long was because of that sword. If not for that sword, his spacetime suppression would have been enough to kill Yi Xian. However, because of that sword, his spacetime suppression, spacetime cage, and spacetime abyss were all ineffective against Yi Xian. Thinking of this, Shogu's expression gradually turned grave. At this moment, he realized that the sword was even more terrifying than he had imagined. How did that human obtain this sword? Shogu's brows knitted together deeply. However, the doubt in his eyes soon turned into excitement. If that sword was in his hands, his battle prowess would increase by at least several times. Moreover, he might even be able to use that sword to reach a higher level. At that time he would be able to bring the otherworldly demonic race to a new height, far surpassing their ancestors. Thinking of this, Shogu immediately stood up. He turned to the side and asked, "Is there any news of that Yi Xian?" Shoyin shook his head. "That person seems to have evaporated into thin air. There's no news of him at all." Shogu frowned slightly. "You can't find him?" Shoyin nodded. "I can't find him." Shogu fell silent for a moment before he said, "According to what I know, that person seems to have a close relationship with the otherworldly demonic race." Shoyin glanced at Shogu. "Patriarch, what do you mean?" Shogu said, "To the otherworldly demonic race." After saying this he vanished on the spot. It didn't take long for Shogu to arrive at the otherworldly spirit world with a group of spirit beast experts. In the sky above the otherworldly spirit world, the otherworldly spirit king glanced at Shogu and the others, and then he said, "King Shogu, I wonder where—" Shogu interrupted the otherworldly spirit king. "Where is that Yi Xian?" The otherworldly spirit king shook his head. "I don't know." Shogu looked at the otherworldly spirit king. "You don't know?" The otherworldly spirit king said in a deep voice, "Your Excellency, our otherworldly spirit race really doesn't know where young Master Yi is. Although young Master Yi was on good terms with our otherworldly spirit race, when he left our otherworldly spirit race." Shogu suddenly interrupted the otherworldly spirit king. "I don't want to listen to such nonsense. Today, if Yi Xian doesn't appear, our beast spirit race will trample the otherworldly demonic race." The otherworldly spirit king's face turned slightly unsightly when he heard this. "King Shogu, our otherworldly spirit race really doesn't know where young Master Yi is. You have to be reasonable." "Reasonable?" A wisp of a cold smile appeared on the corners of Shogu's mouth. "Otherworldly spirit king, you're truly pitiful. Do you know what's the most useless thing in this world? It's the reason you spoke of earlier. In this world only one's fist matters. Only the party with the bigger fist is reasonable. You actually want to reason with me? How laughable. I'll tell you the truth as well." Yi Xian glanced at Shoyin and said, "King Shogu, rumor has it that you're invincible. I'd like to experience it for myself." Obviously he wanted to fight one-on-one. The corners of Beast Gu's mouth curled into a disdainful smile. He was just about to speak when Shoyin, who was beside him, suddenly said, "Don't agree with him. Patriarch, let's attack together. He has no chance at all." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1884. Attack together? Yi Xian glanced at Shoyin. "Motherfucker. This geezer is really bad." Meanwhile, Shogu suddenly said, "Why do this?" As he spoke, he walked towards Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, since you want to fight me in single combat, then I'll fulfill your wish." Shoyin sighed softly when he heard Shogu. Yi Xian gazed at Shogu and smiled, as expected of the king of a clan. You're bold. I Yi Xian admire you. Shogu smiled, cut the crap. Let's fight. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly took a step forward, and then he smashed his fist forward. Bang! A fist swept through the surroundings, and the formidable force contained within it caused space to be obliterated everywhere it passed. Physical strength. Besides being skilled in the space-time Tao, Shogu's physical strength was extremely terrifying as well. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it. He opened his palm and then the green profound sword flew out. Bang! A ray of light slashed onto the fist, and it was instantly slashed into pieces. Meanwhile, Shogu suddenly appeared above Yi Xian, and then he suddenly stomped his foot down. Rumble. The space around Yi Xian instantly collapsed. Yi Xian directly utilized the invincible sword domain, and it forcefully protected him. However, Shogu smashed his fist down once more. Rumble. The invincible sword domain collapsed, and then Yi Xian was instantly blasted 3 kilometers away. Moreover, he'd entered the 6th level of the spatial abyss when his figure stopped moving. After Yi Xian entered the 6th level of the spatial abyss, Shogu didn't attack again and he just watched. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's figure became ethereal, and he returned to reality in the next moment. Shogu's eyes narrowed when he witnessed this scene, and they were filled with excitement. The sword. Yi Xian's sword was able to bring him out of the spatial abyss. Needless to say, at this moment Shogu was both excited and shocked. He was excited because if this sword was in his hands, then the might it could display was simply unimaginable. He was shocked because this sword was actually so terrifying and was capable of bringing a living being out from a spatial abyss. This was truly terrifying. Without thinking too much, Shogu looked at Yi Xian and took a step forward. With this step, his entire body arrived in front of Yi Xian. At the same time, a powerful force instantly blasted towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian blocked with his sword. Boom. Yi Xian was sent flying hundreds of thousands of feet away along with his sword. When he came to a stop, a trickle of blood slowly flowed from the corner of his mouth. Shogu looked at Yi Xian with disdain. Yi Xian, is this all you've got? Yi Xian wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth and said, I surrender. Surrender. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned, including that beast Gu King. Shogu was stunned for a moment, and then he roared with laughter. Surrender? If you surrendered just now, then I might have considered it. But it's too late now. Right at this moment, the sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly vanished. It was a spatial fold. Moreover, it was the 6th spatial fold. This sudden and unexpected event caused Shogu's expression to instantly change drastically. Because it was the 6th spatial fold, and coupled with the fact that he'd underestimated Yi Xian earlier, he'd never imagined that Yi Xian would actually be able to fold the 6th spatial fold. So, he could only defend passively right now. Shogu instinctively raised his arms in front of him to defend. Sword arrival. Bang. Everyone watched as Shogu's arms were chopped off, and then his body was blasted into pieces. As Shogu's soul retreated explosively, Yi Xian pressed his fingers together and guided lightly, and then the green profound sword flew forward. The others hadn't even recovered from their shock when the green profound sword pierced through the center of Shogu's forehead. Bang. The green profound sword instantly absorbed Shogu's soul and didn't give him any chance. The countenances of all the beast spirit race experts instantly turned pale when they witnessed this scene. This human killed King Shogu? In the distance, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. A short moment later, he opened his palm, and the green profound sword flew back into his grasp. The green profound sword trembled slightly as Little Soul said excitedly, Young master, it's a great tonic. Yi Xian grinned, there's still a lot. Shou Yen stared fixedly at Yi Xian, you acted weak first, and then you took them by surprise and executed a killer move to kill them in a single strike. Human, how scheming of you. Yi Xian gazed at Shou Yen and the others, and he didn't waste his breath at all. The green profound sword in his hand suddenly flew forward. At the instant he did, Shou Yen had already appeared over 30 kilometers away. His sword pierced through the air. Yi Xian fell silent when he witnessed this scene. Just as he'd expected, it would be very difficult for him to instantly kill such an expert if they were on guard. Meanwhile, Shou Yen suddenly said, Retreat. As soon as he finished speaking, he and the other beast spirit race experts turned around and vanished into the starry sky. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword returned to his grasp. In the next moment he immediately pursued them. Beast Spirit World. The Beast Spirit World was located in the spirit realm, and there were many powerful forces in the boundless spirit realm. All of them were rank 5 civilizations and the beast spirit race was just one of them. After Shou Yan led all the beast spirit race experts back to the beast spirit race, he seized the opportunity to become the patriarch of the beast spirit race because Shogu had perished. Within the beast spirit race's main hall, Shou Yan immediately gathered all the beast spirit race's experts. At the same time, all the grand formations of the beast spirit race were activated, and even some elders who were in seclusion were summoned. Within the main hall, Shou Yan glanced at all the experts present and then he said, "Immediately notify the entire spirit realm. Tell them that Yi Xian possesses a divine artifact that surpasses the 6th level of spacetime. Not only will he be able to ignore the pressure of spacetime and the abyss of spacetime, he can even enter the 7th level of spacetime." Understood. One of the beast spirit race experts retreated. Shou Yan said, "Elder Shou Qian, go personally to the barbarian spirit race and tell them that if they're willing to help our beast spirit race, then our beast spirit race is willing to submit." Submit. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of all the beast spirit race experts within the hall changed drastically. Elder Shou Qian said in a low voice, "Patriarch Shou Yan, Yi Xian is only one person." "We." Shou Yan slowly closed his eyes. "We can't stop him." Shou Qian said in a low voice, "We can still summon the ancestor." Shou Yan glanced at Shou Qian. "The patriarch is already dead. If we summon the ancestor, then our beast spirit race won't have any trump cards left. Even if we manage to defeat Yi Xian, our beast spirit race will immediately be divided up by the other races. At that time, we won't even have the qualifications to bargain. Our beast spirit race will have the qualifications to bargain with the barbarian spirit race if we summon the ancestor. Even if we submit to the barbarian spirit race's ancestor, our beast spirit race will have the qualifications to talk to the barbarian spirit race as long as we have this card. Moreover, once we submit to the barbarian spirit race's ancestor, then we'll be able to draw trouble to them. The barbarian spirit race is a subordinate race of the illusion ancestor, so once Yi Xian goes against them, then it's equivalent to going against the illusion ancestor. If he goes against the illusion ancestor, then no matter how formidable the power behind him is, he'll still die for sure." Shou Qian hesitated for a moment when he heard this, and then he said, "Does he have a formidable power behind him?" Shou Yan said in a light voice, "How could such a person possibly grow to such an extent if he doesn't have any backing?" Shou Qian intended to say something else, but a beast spirit race expert suddenly appeared within the hall. "Patriarch Yi Xian has arrived." Shou Yan's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he gazed at Shou Qian. "Head to the barbarian spirit race right now." Shou Qian nodded. "Understood." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished from within the hall. In the sky above the beast spirit world, Yi Xian stood with his sword in hand. He chased all the way here. He naturally wouldn't let this matter rest. Meanwhile, Shou Yan suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he gazed at Yi Xian and said, "Young Master Yi, this is a misunderstanding. My beast spirit race is willing to compensate you for your losses." Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "A misunderstanding? What a joke." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm. Shou Yan's expression instantly changed drastically, and he was just about to attack when over a dozen heads suddenly shot into the sky. Yi Xian gazed at Shou Yan and smiled, "I, Yi Xian, don't like to cause trouble, but I'll definitely annihilate anyone who dares offend me." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. An expanse of blood-red sword light flashed through the battlefield. Shou Yan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Activate the formation." As soon as he finished speaking, the space around Yi Xian warped. At the same time, a huge barrier of light enveloped the entire beast spirit world, and then countless strange talismans shot towards Yi Xian from within the barrier of light. Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly as he stood within the warped space, and then he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Bang! Space shattered apart, and the strange talismans in the surroundings instantly vanished. Shou Yan's face instantly fell when he witnessed this scene. Yi Xian was just about to attack again when a voice suddenly resounded from afar. "Wait!" Shou Yan instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this voice. "An expert from the barbarian spirit race has arrived." Yi Xian turned around and saw a middle-aged man walking over slowly from afar. He wasn't a human, but his appearance was actually 90% similar to a human. However, he was much stronger than a human. The barbarian spirit race expert sized Yi Xian up, and then he said, "Are you a human?" Yi Xian smiled, "Yes." That expert gazed at Yi Xian. "I don't care about the enmity between you and the beast spirit race, but from this moment onward, The beast spirit race has submitted to my barbarian spirit race. Now they're a subordinate race of my barbarian spirit race. Understand? Yi Xian nodded. I understand. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slashed with his sword. The head of that expert from the barbarian spirit race flew into the air. All the experts of the beast spirit race were stunned. This human actually dared to kill an expert from the barbarian spirit race? Shou Yin instantly started laughing when he witnessed this scene. Now, enmity had been formed between the human and the barbarian spirit race. Yi Xian turned around to gaze at Shou Yin. Shou Yin spoke in a low voice, "Do you know anything about the barbarian spirit race?" Yi Xian grinned. It wouldn't be too late to kill them first. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared on the spot. Shou Yin narrowed his eyes, and he was about to retreat when a powerful force suddenly descended from the sky. Following that, a sword light shattered, and Yi Xian was forced to retreat. A barbarian spirit person stood in front of Shou Yin. Barbarian spirit race's great elder, Man Tian, 15th phase master. Man Tian looked at the nearby Yi Xian and said, "The bones of the last one who didn't give my barbarian spirit race any face have already turned to ashes." At the side, Shou Yin hurriedly fanned the flames. Grand Elder Man Tian, there is a mysterious force behind this person and it is not simple. Don't be careless. A smile appeared at the corner of Man Tian's mouth. Comparing backgrounds? My barbarian spirit race loves to compare backgrounds the most. Saying this, he opened his right hand and made an inviting gesture. Human, don't say that my spirit beast race is bullying you. Come, call someone over. P.S. I went back to my hometown for Chinese New Year. Too many people came to propose marriage. Vexation. My house's doors is about to be trampled open. Chapter 1885. Call for help. The barbarian spirit race had the ability and confidence to do so because their strength was the #1 race in the entire spirit region. Moreover, the barbarian spirit race had an extraordinary power standing behind them, and it was the illusion race. The illusion race was a genuine level 6 civilization. Even though it was only a rank higher than the barbarian spirit race, it was a gap that the barbarian spirit race would never be able to surpass. The difference between a rank 5 and a rank 6 civilization was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. Man Tian gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. Human, if no one is going to call for help, then I will. As soon as he finished speaking, the space in the surroundings suddenly trembled. In the next moment, numerous terrifying auras swept out from the surroundings, and then over 100 extraordinary experts appeared here. There were actually 5 at the 15th rank amongst them. Moreover, there were a total of 49 at the 14th rank, and the weakest amongst the rest was at the 13th rank. Shou Yan's face fell when he saw this lineup. The barbarian spirit race had mobilized such a large force, so they were obviously determined to obtain the divine treasure in Yi Xian's possession. Meanwhile, Man Tian suddenly glanced at the surroundings and smiled. Everyone, this person killed members of my barbarian spirit race, so my barbarian spirit race is absolutely irreconcilable with him. This is a personal enmity between my barbarian spirit race and him, so I hope that all of you won't interfere. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from the shadows. If your barbarian spirit race wants to take that human sword for yourself, then just say it. Why be so hypocritical? Man Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly turned around and punched. Bang! Space suddenly collapsed over 1 kilometer away, and then an afterimage retreated explosively for 5,000 kilometers. Man Tian glanced at the afterimage and smiled. I said that because I wanted to give you some face. Since you don't want to give me face, then don't blame my barbarian spirit race. As soon as he finished speaking, the experts from the barbarian spirit race vanished on the spot, and the afterimage in the distance was instantly obliterated. The experts in the surroundings were shocked when they witnessed this scene. The barbarian spirit race was really overbearing. However, no one dared to resist. The strength of a single barbarian spirit race wasn't invincible. What they truly feared was the illusion race that stood behind the barbarian spirit race. Back then, the barbarian spirit tribe wasn't that strong. The reason they suddenly rose was because a woman from the barbarian spirit tribe married into the illusory tribe. From then on, the barbarian spirit race's status rose with the tide, and no force in the entire spirit realm dared to not give them face. As time passed, the barbarian spirit race also grew stronger and stronger. Of course, it also grew more and more domineering. However, none of the forces dared to provoke them. In the dark, some experts had already retreated. They were also interested in the sword in Yi Xian's hand. Not only could it ignore the pressure of time and space and the abyss of time and space, it could also enter the seventh layer of time and space. Even the entire spirit realm did not have such a divine item. However, with the barbarian spirit tribe present, they knew that they had no hope at all. A smile appeared on Mantion's face when he saw the experts hiding in the surrounding scatter. He looked at Shou Yin, who was not far away. Shou Yin immediately said, "Great Elder Mantion, from now on, my spirit beast race will follow the lead of the barbarian spirit race." Mantion was very satisfied and slightly nodded. "The Patriarch has already said that although your spirit beast race has submitted to my barbarian spirit race, my barbarian spirit race will not interfere in your spirit beast race's matters. However, if my barbarian spirit race has any orders in the future," Shou Yin quickly said, "my spirit beast race will definitely obey." Mantion smiled. "Very good." After saying that, he turned his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. "Human, I know that you were healing a moment ago. Have you healed your injuries?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'm fine." Mantion smiled and said, "Don't say that my barbarian spirit race is bullying you. You can call for more people, as many as you want." However, Yi Xian shook his head. "No need." After saying that, he suddenly disappeared. Space-time folding. In the distance, Mantion slightly narrowed his eyes and raised his arm to block. Boom. Mantion retreated several thousand feet, and just as he stopped, Yi Xian appeared in front of him once again. In an instant, a wave of sword light directly submerged him. Square-inch sword domain. Chi-chi-chi-chi-chi. Tearing sounds resounded ceaselessly from within the wave of sword light. Right at that moment, a powerful force suddenly erupted from within the wave of sword light. The sword light shattered and a figure retreated repeatedly. It was Mantion. When Mantion stopped, the expressions of all the experts became solemn. Because at this moment, Mantion's entire body was covered in dense sword scars. It was as if he had been dismembered, and it was extremely shocking. In the distance, Shou Yin stared fixedly at the distant Yi Xian, and the depths of his eyes were solemn. At that moment he suddenly discovered that Yi Xian's sword wasn't only powerful, but his sword skills were also terrifying. Who was this human? The solemn expression in Shou Yan's eyes gradually turned into worry. In front of Yi Xian, Mantion glanced at his own body, and in the next moment, his expression became ferocious. He looked at Yi Xian and said, "Human, you have successfully angered me, you." At that moment, a sword suddenly slashed down and Mantion's voice came to an abrupt stop. Mantion raised his arm to block. Bang. The sword light shattered and Mantion was blasted 3 kilometers back. As soon as he stopped, his right arm split open and blood sprayed out. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had suddenly vanished on the spot. Mantion was shocked, and he swiftly raised his left hand to block before spinning it. Kitch. As soon as his voice resounded, Yi Xian suddenly stopped because the area of spacetime he was in had become a spacetime cage. Meanwhile, Mantion said, "Fall." As soon as he finished speaking, the spacetime where Yi Xian was in had suddenly transformed into an abyss, and Yi Xian fell rapidly. A wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of Mantion's mouth, but it quickly froze because Yi Xian had suddenly returned to reality. Mantion's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this, and he seemed to have thought of something. His gaze descended onto the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. "It's your sword." Yi Xian didn't waste his breath and he just raised his hand and slashed. A strand of sword light tore through the battlefield. A trace of ruthlessness flashed through Mantion's eyes. He took a step forward and punched out with his left hand. The powerful force contained within his fist directly tore the space in front of him apart, and Yi Xian's sword light was instantly destroyed. But right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above Mantion and slashed with his sword, drawing the sword to decide life and death. The powerful force of this sword slash instantly tore space apart. Mantion's pupils constricted. He didn't dare to take Yi Xian's sword head-on, because Yi Xian's sword could break through his defenses. The instant Yi Xian's sword descended, Mantion's figure trembled. Space folded, and he directly appeared 3 kilometers away. He had just stopped when a flying sword slashed at him. His speed was extremely fast, because this was also a spatial folding technique. Mantion was greatly alarmed. At this moment he had nowhere to dodge and could only face it head-on. He didn't have time to think and he used his left hand to block. Bang! Under the gazes of everyone, the swords on Mantion's left hand shattered, and he retreated explosively. In the distance, Yi Xian was about to attack again, but right at this moment his expression suddenly changed and he swiftly turned around. At this moment, A fist smashed towards him like a tsunami. Yi Xian hurriedly withdrew his sword to defend himself. Rumble. Along with an explosion, the space where Yi Xian was instantly transformed into a pitch-black spacetime black hole. At the instant that Yi Xian fell into the spacetime black hole, the profound azure sword in his hand trembled violently and hurriedly brought him out of the spacetime black hole. After coming out, Yi Xian turned around and saw a man from the barbarian spirit tribe standing not too far away. He wore an embroidered robe, had a tall figure, and had long hair that draped over his shoulders. He emanated an extremely terrifying pressure. Manqing, the current patriarch of the barbarian spirit tribe. Manqing sized up Yi Xian, and then his gaze descended onto the profound azure sword in his hand. Good sword. Meanwhile, Man Tian walked over to Manqing's side. Patriarch. Manqing looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "You possess such strength at such a young age, so I presume you're not an ordinary person. Since you're not an ordinary person, then you should know of my barbarian spirit tribe. Since you know of my barbarian spirit tribe, why do you dare to become enemies with my barbarian spirit tribe?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "It seems that your barbarian spirit tribe wants to become enemies with me, right?" Manqing shook his head. "My barbarian spirit tribe wants to kill you because it thinks highly of you. What qualifications do you have to become enemies with my barbarian spirit tribe?" Yi Xian gave him a thumbs up. "Amazing." Manqing smiled and said, "No matter who you are or where you came from today, I will shatter your body, imprison your soul, and let you be burned by spirit flames for eternity. I want the world to understand that those who offend my barbarian spirit tribe can only beg for death." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. In the distance, Yi Xian's pupils constricted, and he swiftly drew his sword and slashed. Rumble. Yi Xian was directly sent flying several thousand feet away, but before he could stop, several afterimages suddenly swept over. Man Tian and the other 15th-stage barbarian spirit tribe experts also attacked. Yi Xian quickly displayed his invincible sword domain. Bang! As soon as the invincible sword domain appeared, it collapsed, and his whole body was directly thrown into the spacetime abyss. Just as he escaped from the spacetime abyss, a fist mark suddenly attacked him. Manqing. Yi Xian raised his sword horizontally to block it. Bang! The profound cyan sword in Yi Xian's hand violently trembled, and he rapidly retreated. At this time, 4 15th-stage barbarian spirit tribe experts suddenly rushed towards him from all directions, not giving him a chance to catch his breath. The retreating Yi Xian's eyes flashed with hostility, and he suddenly slashed forward with his sword. Square-inch sword domain. Bang! A wave of sword light instantly submerged him and the 4 15th-stage barbarian spirit tribe experts. There was a moment of silence. Bang! The sword light shattered and a figure flew out. It was Yi Xian. When Yi Xian came to a stop, his left arm had already disappeared. Not only that, but his entire body was covered in cracks and bones could be seen in many places. He was in an extremely miserable state. In the distance, Manqing looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Come, call him over." Right at this moment, the space above Manqing suddenly trembled violently. Manqing frowned slightly when he witnessed this scene. Someone's really coming? It didn't take long for that space to turn into a vortex, and a middle-aged man walked out from within the vortex. When he saw who it was, Manqing burst into laughter. "Ah, human, your men aren't here but mine are." The middle-aged man in front of him was the patriarch of the illusory tribe. After the illusion tribe leader came out, he scanned the surroundings. Very quickly, his gaze landed on Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian's appearance, the illusion tribe leader's legs softened and he almost knelt down. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.